tiny people, then we play with them. Woo, woo. We paint tiny people, then we play with them.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Miniatures Monthly at the Crate and Crowbar. My name is Chris Thurston, and as ever, I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
Month 9, the final month, I think, in which we will attempt to tie the episode to a chaos god.
Yeah, what are we going to do? What's that?
Have a different joke. But this is the most exciting number month for me, because it is the month of change.
It's your month, Chris.
It is. Well, we'll find out.
Yes. But
But yeah, it is, yes, it's all change here at Miniatures Monthly, as almost everything stays the same.
It is a little bit magical this month. I'm feeling
Yeah.
it.
You're feeling it?
Autumn is running in.
Yeah.
The season is changing around.
You never really associate, the Great Changer, Tzeentch, with a bit of Christmas magic. But, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
He's the god of Christmas magic now.
He's the god of Christmas magic. Like that.
Perfect. Yeah. I felt it as well. In fact, the last couple of days have been a kind of nice, I felt like a refresh on my hobby stuff, because a lot of big projects have come to an end, and it feels like I've come to the end of a period where everything was a big, sometimes a little bit stressful deadline project,
Right.
which are very good for motivating you, but can burn you out a little bit.
Right.
And I feel like if on the subject of change, that I'm on the beginning of a possibly new
Hobby project.
new era where I can take smaller projects and do smaller things. But I'm getting ahead of things a little bit. We should talk about some news at the top of the pod.
Absolutely.
It's not a massively newsy month, I would say.
Not compared to the mad summer rush that we've had.
Yeah, we say this now as inevitably as we're recording this,
Yes.
something's being announced. But nonetheless, so it is Essenspiel at the moment, which is a games festival in Germany. And GW have announced there that Necromunda, the new version of Necromunda, the skirmish Undercity gang warfare game that people is extremely fondly remembered, which was, I think, the inspiration for Mordheim, which you and I both loved.
Yeah.
To the extent that Necromunda is like Dead World and Mordheim is like Dead Town.
Yeah.
Is out in the middle of November, which is pretty exciting. And it seems like an interesting box. Like, I don't know about you, I feel relieved to not be bothered about picking up Necromunda straight away.
Definitely. The set reminds me of the Space Hulk set that they released. It's got a similar kind of embossed card sort of playing surface going on, which they've also used for Silver Tower, but it's got a kind of that 40k Underhive vibe to it. And you had 2 war bands, and I think you get some doors and other bits of scenery that you can use to construct. Apparently the rule set will let you play on a flat plane, just like a board game, but if you want to kind of get into the whole Hive City, multiple layers of environment with loads of scenery, then apparently you can do that as well.
Yeah, and that's an expansion. So that's an expansion that's coming out with it, which I think is called Gang War, which provides rules for playing on 3D terrain and also campaign rules for kind of, with character progression, the Shadow War style of thing. Like, to reiterate, like Shadow War, which is skirmish Warhammer 40,000, everyone thought was the new Necromunda until Necromunda also came back.
Yeah.
I suppose so. They've confirmed that the other gangs that people like will come for the game, and it's nice because it is all new models. Like, the gang sculpts are really nice. The Escher models are really cool.
Yeah, they've really gone in for the whole 80s aesthetic with just big hair and, short, colourful jackets and that kind of thing. But also still got that, kind of cyberpunk look to it as well. So, I think they've done a good job with models. Yes.
I should stress that I'm not bothered because it's of no interest to me whatsoever. It's just, it fits comfortably outside of my, hobby window in terms of what I want to do and what I want to achieve and what I can realistically see myself playing. Because, for one thing, I've got a fully painted Shadow War Holoquins gang that I've never used. Yeah. So I'd like to do that at some point and find someone to play that with. So that's, that has scratched that itch for me, I think. In fact, I think if Shadow War hadn't come out, I might have been more excited for this, but
it does feel like they've sort of cannibalized each other a little bit, those two releases. Likewise, I quite get hugely excited about it because I don't have the emotional connection to Necromunda as a core game. And it sounds like they've changed the rules. So I don't know if it will satisfy people.
If exactly this product was coming out, well, not exactly, but if this was coming out and it was more time, I would be excited.
I'd be really excited.
And I think you're right that comes down to having that personal connection with it. Because I think Necromunda is slightly before our time. A little bit as hobby people, as hobby teens, because it's an early 90s thing, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas Mordheim was 98 or 99, like it was right when I was getting into Warhammer.
Yeah. Same.
So I can, but I can totally see why people are excited. And it's nice to have loads more, female miniatures. Arriving in a big all at once. Cause those, because not only are the models really cool, but they provide bits for conversions that will then help people make female warriors for their own other factions, because the more pieces like that come along, the easier that becomes. So that's just a broad good, I think.
Yeah, that's cool.
So the other thing that I thought might be worth mentioning as news is that it seems like on the Warhammer community site, they've now confirmed that the next 2 Shadespire gangs will be in 2018. Which I thought they might be a bit sooner than that. I thought there might be some around Christmas.
Yeah.
But it might be that their Games Workshop is gearing up to like the Christmas release schedule now, where we're getting those big box sets and things that came along last year.
Yeah, and I wonder if we're going to get another AOS release before the year is out. It kind of feels like AOS has gone so quiet for
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either, actually.
Maybe something like a Nurgle Battletome with no new models. That wouldn't necessarily surprise me. Or no new models beyond what has already come out in Blight War and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems like the Heralds of Nagash stuff will be the next sort of big wave of AOS stuff, which will be next year. But it's cool. I think, as we'll talk about later, we've kind of come to the end of our first sort of campaign.
It's we've got a big battle report for you this month.
I'm really looking forward to using that to pivot into a slightly different army with what I've got and what I want to paint.
Yes, same.
So I'm relishing using the Christmas period to get some new models and sort of re-angle my army so that we're playing with new miniatures as soon as possible. Yeah,
my playstyle's going to change quite dramatically. There will be magic nonsense, but we can get onto our plans, I guess, a bit later on. But so I'm not too bothered about it not being mega packed. Also because it makes me feel less guilty about things like picking up new Shadespire warbands. Yeah. So obviously if you haven't listened to it, we did do an hour-long special on Shadespire, which came out last week. Both the podcast and the game, and we both really like Shadespire a lot. I'm really looking forward to playing more of it. So I don't feel I need to dwell on it too much here because we spoke about it a lot. But, one thing that we didn't mention because it wasn't revealed yet last week, or whenever that was. Last week? That was last week, wasn't it? Yeah. Was that, when we said that we thought the Shadespire expansions would be between £15 and £20, they're £17.50.
There you go.
So we nailed that one.
Bang on. That's a great price, by the way.
It really is, yeah. It's actually not that much more, it's not that much cheaper. Not much more expensive, than a large, small ship in X-Wing. That's a strange thing to say unless you play X-Wing. But X-Wing expansions run, for one small ship is 12 quid and that goes up to about 15, 16 quid and then up to 30 quid for the big expansions. So 17.50 for an entire faction. Yeah. Is pretty rad, actually.
It's really good. I mean, you could buy 5 Spite Revenants for £22 if you're collecting an army. With this you get, if you're getting the Undead box, you're getting a bunch of models and a load of cards, and a lot of those cards transfer, they go pan deck, so. Yeah,
I'm not sure I'm playing enough to justify buying every expansion as it comes out for the cards. However, that doesn't feel totally intimidating in a way that I thought it might, particularly if we're talking about two factions every couple of months. Yeah. It's not actually that bad. For sure. But I might pick up the Orcs next week, because I know you're picking up the Skeletons. Yeah, I figure if I get the other one, because I think I like the look of how they play. And so I think that might fit nicely in. And then also, actually, I've always wanted to paint some Iron Jaws. Yeah. But I have no reason to do that.
Great opportunity.
At all. Yeah. Which is actually a great thing about Shadespire.
Yeah, sure.
Not to bang on about great things about Shadespire, but, getting these little kind of sort of single serving, but useful, painting things is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm not capable of only buying one model from a faction just because I want to paint that model. I kind of have to plan around something with it. You know what I mean?
It's got to have a purpose.
Yeah. Which is silly, but I don't think I'm alone in that.
I know what you mean. Yeah, definitely. I'm like that.
And so that's genuinely pretty cool. So, that's a cool thing that's happening. They have sort of shown now that they're selling things like dice and card sleeves, which is another way, speaking of ways they might be making money from Shadespire, another way that might turn a profit without impacting the game much, which is also pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's again, they seem like £5 for some card sleeves, £6 for some dice, pretty standard pricing for them.
Yeah, although I've seen some pretty, quite cagey responses to the GW sleeves.
Right.
Like I sleeved up all my Shadespire cards now in, Fantasy Flight sleeves. Unfortunately the two manufacturers are incompatible, so the cards melted. No, they're fine and they work really well. So, and they fit really nicely, whereas apparently the GW ones are really tight. So I don't know. Mileage may vary, I guess. Yeah. And dice are dice. So yeah. They have actually also shown that they're going to be doing Fantasy Flight style tournament kits for stores on a subscription service, which is interesting.
Right.
So what that means is that your independent shop, or presumably every official Games Workshop shop, can subscribe to receive prize packs, essentially, to run monthly and quarterly tournaments. Huh. And so they include things like deck boxes, alternate art versions of cards, and the ones they've shown are pretty cool.
Yeah.
And things like activation tokens, like acrylic activation tokens. This is completely out of the Fantasy Flight playbook, like 100%, in terms of just the distribution of stuff. But that's neat, because that means that if you do start going to events and things, and I know that like our local Games Workshop is planning to do this a lot, then, it sustains that interest. I know from my experience how that can really help sustain your interest in something. So it's cool that they've nicked that idea, basically.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. What are you up to, Tom? What's your last month been like?
Well, I've not had a chance to paint up a huge amount of stuff, but I've done a lot of gluing and uncoating and stuff, and I've started assembling the Sylvaneth that I had in boxes since last Christmas. So these have been gathering dust on the shelf. I've got some Kernoth Hunters. I've got the rest of my Dryads, and I've got my Branch Witch as well, which is a nice little kind of allied Sylvaneth force.
Yeah, the arrival of the allied system, like halfway through that gap, is kind of perfect, found a place for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always I got the models initially just because I loved the models and really enjoyed painting them, and it's been so much fun to assemble them because you get so many bits in those kits, like loads of just little critters and branches and extra little kind of arms and things. And especially, so I've been gluing stuff from my Dryads onto my Kernoth Hunters to make them sort of spikier, and they've got like extra arms coming out of them and stuff, which sounds weird. It looks a lot better than I've made it sound. But they're absolutely wonderful kits, and it's quite unusual for me to actually enjoy assembling a kit. Normally it's just a kind of a chore because you're cleaning up mold lines, green stuff in gaps. It's kind of feels like work, doesn't it? I really want to get to the painting part. But if you don't do a good job of the assembly and clean up, then it can make your models look really bad, even if you paint them really well. So yeah, I've been taking time over that. And I'm going to paint them up in a kind of dark reds and purples, with bright red and yellow leaves to pop, and some of them will be kind of like bone coloured as well. So it's going to be it's interesting to paint up a force where every individual model can be a different colour and have different patterning. So I've been obviously collecting Stormcast, incredibly regimented, very much just a martial process. You do this, you do that, you get the gold to this point, then you do the blue. But for Sylvaneth, they're just such wonderful organic figures, and they dry brush incredibly well. So you're using a lot more different techniques while you're doing it. So you do a bit of edge highlighting, a bit of dry brushing. It's just been really, really satisfying, and they're quick to come together as well.
You've also got your Wanderers done as a related force, which is cool.
Yeah, they took ages. So my friend Chimp kit bashed some Wanderers together from various different boxes, and they look really, really cool. And I've gone for a black and red colour scheme with like bronze weapons.
Yeah, they'll look nice alongside the Sylvaneth.
Yeah, they should. They're intended to blend right in. They're supposed to.
I guess they do try and blend in.
Yeah. They've in my mind, they're like a cult they're obsessed with the Sylvaneth because they're obviously their kind of spiritual, kin from ages past. So they follow the Branch Witch, and, the Sylvaneth don't necessarily want them there, but the Wanderers will turn up and kind of, walk the pathways, the tree pathways, whatever it is. They're weird teleporting stuff. They'll wander their pathways with them. So yeah, it's going to be, I don't know if I'll buy more Wanderer models, partly because they were incredibly fiddly and small, and they took ages just to get up to a really basic standard for some reason, because there's so many different layers to them, so many different kind of
like cloaks over tabards over
that's right, yeah.
tunics and
then a tiny little bit of kind of metal plating on one arm and nowhere else in the model. Just lots of independent little bits, nothing like Siege, but still a bit of a chore in a way. But I'm glad I've got them, and once I've fixed the standard bearer that snapped off, I think they're quite funny in the game because they suck really bad. There's a sense with their rules that they really are from the old world, and actually the Mortal Realms has just become a more dangerous place.
I think there's a place for models like that in terms of just sitting back on objectives. Like, we can talk about that kind of idea when we get to a battle report.
Yeah.
But we did both have units in our armies that suck, but who basically stood back and provided some service. Like, even if it's, in my case, it was just rubbish men that stop you from coming down from space in a certain area.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. That's their only job.
Just chat.
Bodies,
really.
yeah.
So like them and, they're like Gryph-hounds are better, for example. Like the Stormcaster dogs are better than Wanderers.
Yeah. They aren't magic dogs from heaven.
Yeah, it's dogs from heaven. But still, I like the character of having a rubbish unit on the board trying to do things, because if they ever do anything, that'll be
well, I guess this whole thing is starting to like, today, and we are skipping a little bit, but like, this is the first time I've ever seen you cast a spell in a game of Age of Sigmar.
Felt so good.
Like, you were used to elite units where everything has multiple wounds and everything matters. So, having, that change is really nice. I'm gearing the opposite direction. I'm looking forward to having stuff with multiple wounds where I have to, where they can do something rather than evaporate. Yeah, be weirdos.
It's interesting how like the game just feels so different just with how we'll have one new unit on the field that isn't from your army.
Yeah, we had a couple of new things today that really helped with that, but we will get to that. We should talk about our months.
Yeah, apart from that, I still haven't painted my Star Drake. That's going to be an ongoing theme in these podcasts.
Yeah, one day that's going to be the big new unit that shows up, and then
I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait to paint it actually.
Yeah, so I've had a kind of weird couple of months now. Like, so since the sprint paint I did for Blackout, which I described on the pod, I've actually struggled to get back into painting, not because of enthusiasm necessarily, but because of I had a lot of like work trips in a row and a few unrelated kind of things I had to do that just sort of prevented me from like relaxing into it. And also because I knew I was preparing for Armies on Parade. For the Age of Sigmar, for that was yesterday, the time we're recording this. That was sort of like, if I wasn't doing something that was gearing towards that deadline, even from the point when that was 2 months away to the point when that was a week away, it didn't feel like the right thing to do necessarily. So one thing that took the pressure off, is that I was originally planning, as I've said on this podcast, to do a 1,000 Suns board for the 40k Armies on Parade, which is this week. However, I'm not free on that Saturday anymore, so there's no point putting the effort in. So I like the idea I came up with, so I'm just going to put the time in over the next year and do that next year.
Yeah, nice.
Those models aren't going anywhere. I'd rather take the time and do it right. So rather than try and bash something out this week and then not even be able to go.
Yeah.
So, my hobby month was really dominated by these big deadlines, I think, for one thing, which creates a positive pressure in terms of you get stuff done. But it also, I think it can make things feel not stressful necessarily. I'm trying to think of the right way of framing it, but it makes it feel like it's another set of obligations in your life at that point, right? Like, and that's the reason you get motivated and you do stuff. But it also means you feel less free to kind of follow a thought or just pick something that you've been meaning to paint for ages and you haven't got around to and just paint it.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, what you've done, which is a really nice feeling as well, because you just, something's been ticked off the list, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But the other big upheaval, which this actually happened back in September, but I didn't talk about it on the podcast because we were a little bit pressed for time last time, but I want to talk about it, is the way that my relationship with X-Wing has dramatically changed, to get off the GW wagon briefly.
Yeah.
And I know that obviously the majority of people listening to this are here for the hot Warhams, but it's been quite an interesting experience for me, and I think a relevant experience, because it concerns two things. One is what happens when you've committed so much time and energy and care to building up a collection of things and it's time to start getting rid of it. Because that is just, we'll face that, right? Like, you're not going to have all of your Warham's men all your life, probably.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, it's interesting to me how communities change, because, so the long story short, and I'm not going to do the complete blow by blow, but long story short, I really loved X-Wing for probably the better part of a year and a half, where I'd play every week and practice and just buy the new expansions as they came out and buy tickets for the big events without even really thinking about it. Like, I think about it, but it would be like, I would assume I was going to do that. I'd be thinking ahead of time to know, like, am I going to be free when Nationals comes around? Am I going to be free for the European Championships this year? And just take it really seriously.
Yeah.
And that was, and then over time, my enthusiasm started to wane. And the reasons for that stem almost entirely from the health of the game competitively. X-Wing has just in the last week had a very dramatic FAQ that will shake things up. But the thing that I thought was interesting is actually I don't think it's enough at this point. And I've gone from someone who it's been enough to think, oh, the game is just 1 or 2 tweaks from being back to where it was, to thinking we have a second edition problem here, by which I mean we need X-Wing second edition. And and once you've crossed that threshold in your mind, I've found, because I've watched friends do the same thing in the community, you start to perceive the problems with the game in a different way, where simply nerfing the things that need nerfing and maybe fiddling with some rules will no longer cut it. Particularly because, the expansions and the stuff that's coming next and all that stuff will still pull the game in a kind of power creep direction down the road it's already going. So that was a big set of changes. A long story short, the game has moved away, I think, substantially from its core mechanic, which is like setting these dials and kind of trying to move miniatures in a kind of analog way where you set up, you can be spatially clever in a way that you can't in almost any other miniatures game. I think it feels like dogfighting, to being a game that's much more substantially about card combinations and upgrades and automatic damage and matchups and sort of meta and tech. To use a card game kind of terminology, it's much more of a knowledge heavy game than a skill heavy game now, I think. In that the skill floor has risen and the skill ceiling is not really moved, and if anything, it's come down slightly, which is kind of interesting. Like some of the highest skill cap X-Wing archetypes, like things like TIE Swarms or TIE Phantoms, which are those cloaked ship that's very invulnerable, are completely unplayable now, in a competitive way. None of this should change the game for people who want to have a knockabout with friends. That's fine. But once you've invested to the point, it's really hard to pull back to that. And I tried as well. I think I may have spoken about this in the pod, like trying to go to events with a different attitude and just enjoy them. And I did that at Nationals. And it was okay. But it was a weird experience because, and this is the thing I think I've realized, is you can't really put the horse back in the stable with that sort of thing. And as soon as people start to feel pressure to run, strategies that are quite a negative play experience for both players, honestly, because it's just resolving effects until somebody wins, that kind of thing. As soon as the interaction becomes so abstract that it's like, I do my game, you do your game, I do my game, you do your game. And that becomes the way to win. It becomes hard to ask people to not do that. And communities really struggle to kind of, to regulate themselves. So what happens is, tiers start to form in the community that didn't exist before. The game always had, like, people who take competition very seriously and people who don't, or people who take it seriously but also value being original or something like that. And X-Wing was at a wonderful point, particularly when I started playing, where those lines were very blurry. Like, you could come along with something you'd invented yourself and do well, broadly speaking. It's simply not possible now, and that creates divides within the community. It creates people who want to win and want to run the best stuff and have that experience, and it creates and those people maybe exist in tension. People who are upset with the state of the game, and the people who do run the meta get defensive about the meta, and the people who don't run the meta and be angry about that. And then it's no one's right or wrong, but it's the game itself has created this divide between people. I think Warhammer has always had this problem. Traditionally, where 40k used to be so kind of janky and so prone to, breaking the game in order to win the game, that people would, house rules things, or like you'd have sportsmanship prizes and things like that. It kind of matured to cope, but X-Wing hasn't. So it ended up in a position where actually the community I stopped enjoying it. Like I stopped feeling like I could talk to anybody about the game and be on the same page, or like, trust the person across the table to have the same sort of set of etiquettes that I did, that kind of thing. I had one pretty badly negative experience at European Championships, which was completely unprecedented for me. And it's felt like a downhill slope from there. And I put all of it at the feet of the design of the game, basically. And more specifically at the extremely slow rate with which it is updated and with which they communicate. And this is super interesting because Fantasy Flight, I think we're ahead of Games Workshop in a lot of ways in terms of creating these competitive communities that were pretty positive at a time when GW was A, uncommunicative, and B, was associated with these pretty hostile, clubs that you wouldn't necessarily be comfortable going to play in. And how is that flipped? Like GW are communicating every single day now on the community site. They FAQ new 40k extremely quickly. Whereas X-Wing is bogged down in FAQs that take 6 to 9 months to arrive, but are extensively playtested in that period by a group of players picked privately under NDA from among the top set of competitive players, which means that divide in the community only extends because the new FAQ app comes out and everyone's surprised except the people who've been playtesting it for months, which is, and the community's not big enough to have that not have an effect on how it feels. I don't know. I don't want to dwell too much on what they've got wrong, because what I end up doing is selling off a huge chunk of my collection, giving a lot of it away, and just sort of downgrading the game in my mind to something I do for fun when it suits me at the right kind of event with friends, which is a positive thing, right? Like to land on something nice, I think that's a positive thing. And I think that's a healthy thing. But I suppose the lesson for me is that community and a good feeling in a community is very, very, takes a long time to build up, and it doesn't take that long. It needs to be protected very carefully, and community management as a concept needs to be taken very seriously. And I'm a bit disappointed in that I don't feel like Fantasy Flight do take it seriously. And I think they have some weaknesses with the license, where having a Star Wars product means that how they communicate is obviously it's a little bit more difficult when you're working with a licensee and that kind of thing. Yeah. But it's been a huge, it's a huge, I feel a lot safer now with GW stuff, weirdly, even though I never would have felt that way when I started playing X-Wing, because they've made a demonstrable attempt to change the tone of Warhammer, to introduce new games like Shadespire that fill some of those same spaces, but are designed in a way that I hope encourages better interactions between players and that kind of thing. I don't know. It has genuinely made me sad. It's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up, because, we did this podcast about our experience of miniatures in a given couple of months. And that's a big part of mine, was like feeling genuinely like, my 3 shelves of X-Wing is now 2 shelves of X-Wing, and going down to, which is still a lot of X-Wing, I should stress. But like getting to that, it was like, oh man, like did I waste money? Like, you start to unpick some of those kind of like uncomfortable kind of thoughts you sometimes have about your investment in these things.
Was there a specific turning point, or was it the fact? Was it
Nationals for me was the turning point?
A bad experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, so at that point I was so tired of waiting for the FAQ that, so Nationals, like, I didn't have a bad time, but I had to do the thing that I think in any event, I think anytime you go to a War Games event or even a miniatures event, this could include painting competitions, any time when you're interacting with other people, you should be your best version of your hobby. I don't want to sound like a self-help book, but like it is very easy to put a little bit more effort in that makes everything more pleasant for everybody else. And I think if everyone puts a little bit of effort into being pleasant and open and trying to encourage people, that kind of thing, then everyone has a better time. It's not like one person has to carry the entire event by themselves. It's just if you are engaged and pleasant and interested, then it's nicer. It's just nicer. You feel nice when people are interested in what you've got and what you've brought and in the game you're playing with them. Yeah. A lot of negative experiences I think about with wargaming aren't to do with, it's nothing to do with like someone like being an asshole or anything like that. It's due to the person who's on this phone for the entire game, that kind of thing, right? You know what I mean? Where you feel like, I'm spending this time, right? You want to feel like you're actually doing something. You're not going to become best friends with everybody, but nonetheless. And, so I did that, but it felt like at Nationals, I was like, I'm putting all this effort into just like having a good time. And it was kind of tiring. And I didn't feel like I was getting it back as much. Like I had a couple of games which were genuinely really fun. Yeah. And I'd brought a list that I just leaned into like, fuck it. Like, I kind of hate the meta. So I'm just going to run 3 X-Wings themed after the scene in The Force Awakens when the X-Wings come over the water. And I did averagely, like middle of the pack, which I'm happy with because like middle of the pack with that is fine. And there was a beautiful moment where, because the way the tables work, you go up and down the Swiss based on your performance in games. And so you're surrounded either side of you on the tables by people who have about the same play record as you do. And there was a moment, and it's just mad maths really, where every single other person who was running 3 Force Awakens X-Wings, all 4 of us at the tournament, it was like a 300 person tournament. So 4 of us had basically the same list or variants on it. And we all ended up next to each other, but not playing each other. Wow. So it was just a row of X-Wings. And awesome. It was all these people that we'd all came to the tournament with the same sensibility, which was nice. But it means that finding the people that you have a kinship with feels like finding islands of relatability in a sea of the same old. I had a game against a guy who's, I think a relatively prominent UK X-Wing player. Nice dude. Used to be kind of famed for running TIE swarms, which aren't competitively viable anymore. He was running something where like, whatever I did didn't really matter. There was no interplay between our lists really. I did my thing and then he did whatever he needed to do to counter it. And we just resolved those dice rolls until the game ended. And he sort of looked up from his game about halfway through and said, man, I wish I was playing this with my TIE fighters. Like, I wish we could have a game where I was running my TIEs and you were running this because that'd be really fun. And this isn't fun. But I feel like I have to do this because this is how I potentially win. And that's the point, like, where you have to make a decision about what's this worth to you, right? The experience or the potential of a trophy. And like, even if watching the live stream of the final of the X-Wing the UK Nationals, it's kind of depressing because it's two lists that aren't really fun to watch. And two people who don't seem to be having fun, kind of.
Going through the motions.
Yeah, going through the motions. And it's like, this is not the game I loved. And I think that's a shame, but and afterwards I just thought about it and I realized, hang on, if I feel this way, I can moan about it. And I appreciate that you've had, 10 minutes of me moaning about it now. So I'm going to bring that to a close. I can kind of, I can leave angry posts on Reddit, not angry, but like I can write endless blog posts about what I think needs to change. Or I can move on a bit. And that's actually kind of a relief. It's sad, but it is also a relief when you kind of unburden yourself of what feels like an obligation.
Yeah. Do you think it's just inevitable that all games go this way with enough time, given the requirement to expand relentlessly to make money?
I think all games have this problem in some cases, like power creep is a thing. And so on. I think there are ways that games can be structured that guard against it. Like, that's when we were talking about in the Shadespire podcast, like whether or not those expansions will start to feel like a negative experience where you feel like you have to buy the expansions to get the right cards to play competitively. At the moment, it doesn't seem to be the case. And there are various systems that we talk about in the Shadespire podcast about how Shadespire potentially has built-in protections against some of these issues, in terms of how it's structured as a game, but also how it's structured as a business. X-Wing is in a weird place where, some of its things like having printed cards for every rule, like things like ship cards and upgrade cards, is great from a readability point of view. But it means that when one of those things is busted and needs to be altered by the designer, it's not a case of issuing a new codex or something like that. With Warhammer, where that's much easier, it's a pretty big change, and Fantasy Flight have felt out over the years how much they feel they can change about a card once it's printed. And it used to be very, very little, and now it's a lot because it needs to be.
Right.
But it feels like the physical structure of the game fights balance. And then there's problems like licensee, which I think exacerbate things for X-Wing. And then there's all this stuff that kind of surrounds it. And this expresses itself in different ways. Like there's a really impressive now fan-made, X-Wing reboot called X-Wing Supremacy, which is just sort of starting to find an audience, and he's only really reworked the first wave of ships, X-Wings and TIE Fighters and stuff people really love. But it's a really impressive piece of work. It has some of the same thoughts in it that I've had about things that make X-Wing better. And that it feels like the X-Wing 2.0. When I say that, like, I think this is a second edition probably. Yeah, yeah. It looks like X-Wing second edition. It looks like what I would want that to be like. And it's really interesting when that happens, because that person has clearly had the existence of it expresses some of the same frustrations that I have. And where I've chosen to move away, he's or she has chosen to lean in and fix something, make something, which is also a really good instinct. But I hope it's not doomed. I really hope it's a success, and I hope it finds a competitive community. I'd be interested in playing it, I think. Because this has happened with other games. I believe this happened with Blood Bowl, where one particular edition wasn't very well liked by the community, so they just made a different one and played that instead. And eventually a lot of those changes made their way back into the game, because GW paid, the designers at that point have to sit up and go, if they're ignoring our rules and making their own, then maybe that's the direction the game needs to go in.
Right.
So there's always hope in this sort of thing. And it's a mature game problem, right? But, I suppose if there's a moral to this, it's like, don't take positive communities for granted. Like, this stuff has to be protected both from a game design point of view, but also from a community perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like, Bristol X-Wing has largely preserved its integrity through this due to a kind of meta-averseness and being generally quite good with bringing new players in and kind of encouraging people to do different things and try different rules for tournaments and that kind of thing. So there's always a way. But, it's been a genuine, sort of low point for hobby for me. And I kind of don't want to just talk about, I'd like to talk about more positive things now, but I don't always want to be talking about what amazing things happened to movement models this month, because sometimes things suck a bit and you have to kind of make a decision.
Yeah, it is really sad. It's, I mean, Magic the Gathering reboots, doesn't it? I don't know what Netrunner does, but Netrunner had a similar problem where people moved away from it as it expanded and expanded.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see how, I think games just have a shelf life, don't they? And the idea of a living game, like, for a board game where you're constantly adding I wonder if it's just an endemic problem in that type of product, that it's always going to go that way eventually. And you almost want to design a game with the reset in mind. So you want to make the moment of resetting the game again as painless as possible for people who have paid a lot of money for models and cards and that sort of thing. It's tricky.
I think, to some extent as well, it's like, there's a really interesting thing here. So a really interesting comparison with Warhammer, particularly recently, is, and it's sort of mad to me that, you get a lot of FAQs quite quickly for 40k, particularly new 40k over the last couple of months.
Yeah.
To the point that like GW seem to be reacting to if something kind of abusive or negative emerges through a tournament in terms of strategies and ways to win that seem to be a risk to the competitive health of the game. There's precedent this year for them getting like axed the next day, right? Like, and so that means obviously that means that they are chasing the game, right? Like they're chasing the players. But because the investment in a given 40k army is pretty high, it means that they over time disincentivize trying to do that. Because you can go and pay, a bit like the Kharadron Overdraws thing that happened, right? You can go and pay 250 quid to try and manipulate a particular rule. But now there's no guarantee that they're not going to FAQ that tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that means that sort of, there's no sense that like, I'll pay this 250 quid extra for a 10-man unit that will win me a couple of games. And that'll be good competitively for a year. And that's worth it to me. They're training the audience out of that expectation, I think, by just being really quick to adjust things. But that also is sort of a weird fit for a game where you invest so much in your army. Like you and I were talking about pivoting our armies into a new direction now after a good year of play with them. And in that time, we haven't been able to change a huge amount about what we do, even though we both got battle tomes in that time and a new general's handbook and that kind of thing. The core has changed the same. With X-Wing, with my old X-Wing collection, I could build any list in the game at any time, which means that if they FAQ'd that game every week, I'd be fine. Like maybe I have to make changes every week, but I had everything I needed to adapt. Whereas not few Warhammer players have everything they need to adapt to every potential change. And yet one of those games has extremely fast FAQs and one of the games has extremely slow FAQs, which really seems like it's the wrong way around to me sometimes, right? Like Warhammer with 6 monthly FAQs would be something, like it'd be okay. But like, at least the X-Wing community could actually adapt and it would, it's a weird one. And I've just knocked my microphone with my elbow, so hopefully that wasn't too just startling. I made a gesture of, But yeah, so I think it's always but I think one thing it's maybe consider as well is that I'd gotten very excited during those years of like, just automatically getting in on every new thing in X-Wing. And that led to a collection that I honestly wasn't using enough of to justify having anymore. And because I wasn't excited about playing the breadth of the game in a competitive way as I used to, it didn't make sense for me to keep a lot of those models. So I passed them on. And that I think is a healthy thing, actually. Like I think both in terms of being willing to do that when you realize you're not making use of something that you own, but also in terms of now I will be much more cautious in future about over investing in something that has the danger for as I said in the Chase Pie podcast, for my investment to be devalued by the actions of a developer, which I think is a thing.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, we cover the world of video games a lot and, even a £100 purchase for a game and a bunch of expansions, a persistent game, like there's a certain guaranteed amount of money and, and a guaranteed amount of output. And it's so, with wargaming and with miniatures, it's a bottomless hole, isn't it?
Yes, it can be.
It can be if you kind of get really, really into it, which is always something to step away from, perhaps. Yeah,
well, I think there's an enthusiasm that comes to collecting, basically. Yeah, it's like, I'm going to have this collection, and that's it's a positive thing. It can feel really nice.
Yeah.
But I think, it's nice to, and I wonder if this was a bit like immersion therapy where I've broken that habit out of myself now to some extent. We'll find out. The next thing comes along and whatever, but, maybe that'll be Shadespire. But yeah, it's been an interesting experience because I think it's been the first experience in miniatures since I got back into something that has been such a positive thing to get back into. Like, we talked about this back in episode 1 of Miniatures Monthly, right? Like why it was such a kind of cool thing for us both to have rediscovered.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I think I've had to kind of stare down the barrel of what to do when it's bad. What to do when the plastic men are bad, Tom. What to do when it's giving you bad feelings, right? Rather than, I wanted to talk about it on this podcast, but I don't want to stew in it on a kind of month by month basis, right? Sure. I don't want it to hang over me. I just want to make a decision. So that's what I did.
Yeah, there's something kind of brutal about X-Wing because it is designed as a one-on-one competitive game and it doesn't have the hobby aspect that, might justify it in other realms, if you know what I mean.
Because you're drifting in and out of RB thing, right? You can change the proportions of your investment from like, I make dioramas now to I play games competitively and find your place. It had less of that, I think, and that's a shame, but hey, it's a thing. It's done now. Kind of want to move, like, should we talk about Warhammer?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's talk about some Warhammer. So my big thing this month was Armies on Parade.
Woo.
Which, so has really dominated my painting. So I've only done like a tiny bit of actually like model painting this month. And that was mostly like, touching up the pink horrors and screamers and things that I bashed out for Blackout.
Yeah. And
now they've had an extra pass of highlights and things and touched at the bases slightly. So I don't think when we played with them today, you couldn't tell which ones were
not
the slightly rushed ones, right? So yeah, I mean, obviously I'm removing them from the board by the fistful most of the time. So you'd never tell, but like, so they just needed a little bit of love and like, because both my Lord of Change and various other models have been, made worse for wear by travel. I just had to do some kind of little bit of work on them. But the bigger part of the month was, putting together my board for Armies on Parade, which I'll put some pictures of in the show notes. And maybe if you follow us on Twitter, you've already seen it. But this is kind of interesting because I did, the present I bought myself after Blackout was a Skull Keep, which is a little 2-part Chaos Tower.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's pretty big. It's pretty big. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it in terms of Armies on Parade board for a while, but then I saw that they were selling individual Realm of Battle boards, which are the Games Workshop plastic scenery tiles, incompatible with my own third-party scenery board. Well, found that you can put them next to each other. Yeah, it's mostly fine. But they were selling them individually and this kind of solved the problem instantly. Back when I thought I was going to do a, pretty intensely scratch-built Thousand Suns diorama, I figured the AOS one would be all about scale. It would be about having a lot of models on a board and it was in the end. But I bought a board that has basically a big space clock bursting out of the ground on it because it felt right.
It's really cool.
It is really cool. I really like it. So I guess this will be mostly like a what I've been painting thing, but I've sort of learned a bunch of things because I've had a really weird painting month in that basically I haven't watered down a paint in about a month. I have painted more on the floor, as in like with the panel on the floor, because it's a 2 foot by 2 foot board, so it doesn't fit on a table, like lying on the floor, like painting it like a decorator. And I've done most of my painting with like massive brushes and dry brushes, and it's been very un-Warhammer painting, right? Like I haven't done the kind of gingerly holding up a 28mm model and kind of slowly rotating them and kind of, you know, I've done a lot of, painting and decorating basically. But, there's a few things that have sort of stood out to me about that experience. One is that anything flat is really fast to paint, like really quick. Like blocking out colors on that board took like an hour, whereas anything vertical, like tower, takes 1,000,000 fucking years.
It's quite funny because I was talking about scenery as a holiday on the podcast like a few months back. And then you got some scenery and it's like the most complicated piece of scenery they do. It's like a nightmare to actually paint.
A lot of skulls on that.
A lot of skulls, a lot of metal bits, a lot of kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I've learned some things. So like the, those towers have like intense metal kind of crenellations and I probably use that word wrong and someone will tell me, but like, you know, and little spikes and spires and like, you know, brass skulls that have iron bindings on them. And I've seen, like, I always Google image search, like, this particular piece just to see what people have done with it. Sometimes you take ideas and sometimes it's just to sort of see. And I've seen people who've obviously sprayed it like a bone color, washed it and dry brushed it, and it's actually fine. And the entire thing is stone.
Right.
And it looks wrong on close inspection because you can see things that are clearly supposed to be rivets that don't make sense if they're made of stone or whatever. And I'm not okay, like it was also for a display board, so I wanted to do it like quote unquote right.
Yeah.
But I think the mistake I made is I sprayed it black and then did all the stonework because that's sort of like embedded. So like I kind of dry brush past, without, I could dry brush freely without, getting stuff on what would be metal later on. And then I did the job of painting in all of the metal. And I'll take some photos so people can see this, but like that took a surprisingly long time. Even if you look at the model, you don't realize how much metal there is and how wrong it would look if any of it wasn't right.
Right.
And then, so it was all the metal of 2 different kinds of metal and then all of the bone and that takes 2 layers because it's a lighter color of a black and so on and so on. So it took a long time. And then it was sort of factoring in things like you wash the hell out of stuff, right? You just obliterate it with washes because it's a big model and you want I think I want sharp contrast. I'm not painting it to look realistic. I'm painting it to look like a dramatic, high fantasy. It's covered in fuck. There's no painting that like in a kind of realist sort of like, I want this to feel like a grounded Skull Keep where people actually live. Like,
yeah, I see what you mean.
Like I want it to be, almost all the way to He-Man kind of, because it is 90% of the way to He-Man anyway. And, you wash the shit out of it and then you got to be prepared. That's going to like take 2 hours to dry properly, to let it dry properly. So there's loads and loads of like, got through a lot of podcasts. It was quite intense kind of.
Yeah.
And because it's very samey as well. So I had this idea of, I built this kit in a modular way so the pieces come apart and I can rearrange it and it'll be compatible with other parts of the same kind of Chaos Dreadhold set. But I don't know if I will do any more of them simply because
nightmare.
However, if I did do it again, I think I would spray it metal and then paint the rock in and accept that I'm going to get some, blue or whatever the color I'm using for the rock is on metal parts and have to fix them.
Yeah.
Because I still think on balance, it might not be quicker, but I think it would be less bad repetitive. You know that feeling of when you're like, oh, I'm sick of this.
Yeah.
Right? I think you get less of that because you're just splodging in the big rock bits rather than like rotating it from every angle so that you make sure there's no angle, but you can hold it where suddenly the sides of all of the rivets are black.
Yeah.
That side of things.
Yeah, right? It is huge as well. Like, probably like foot tall, something like that.
I think it's about 14 inches tall.
Oh,
maybe a little bit bigger than a foot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's 3-sided.
Yeah.
So that is a large piece of scenery. Like most scenery kits you're going to buy are going to be nowhere near that big and have nowhere near that amount of detail on. So it is kind of a mammoth project. So,
I think I was dumb basically. I think I didn't think it was a mammoth project. I was like, I'll bash this out.
It looks rad though. I love it. I'm looking forward to playing around it more. Our future games.
Well, I kind of wanted to have it so when we move into Firestorm with the city sieges, have something to represent like a bastion or that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I did the board itself. And the nice thing about the board itself is it was actually pretty quick. Like, so I got this big space clock bursting out the ground and like, it's 2 feet by 2 feet of terrain and there are skulls and bits of stonework and stuff like that on it. But actually, like, that was really fun because it was a big flat thing. And it turns out they're really easy because you just get a massive brush and it's fine. But I was pretty pleased with how parts of that came out and I actually finished it in good enough time that I could do some detail stuff that I was pretty pleased with. So there's, the inside of the clock, there's like these flat surfaces that you get the impression should be holes. Cause there's like a really thin cog on like a pure flat surface, which I think you could probably just do as all brushed metal, but it looks better to me if you pick out the cog as like brass or something and then have like, I ended up doing Starfields like I did in Lord of Change's wings underneath that so that it looked like it had some depth to it, but like, because this big space clock is going to be important to our game later to some extent, but like, I wanted it to feel like this thing was emerging from like the realm of chaos through a crack in reality, not just there's a clock in the ground. And I suppose, if I had, any techniques to share from this month that I'm pleased with, and I'll mention one thing because it came up yesterday on Mise en Parade. So I ended up doing like a brushed metal effect for the space clock itself.
Yeah.
Because as people know, if they've listened to me bang on about this over the course of the last couple of months, I tend to paint every part of a model. Like if a model has like different surfaces and like, runes etched on a thing as the big clock do, I'll pick them out in a different color so you can see all of them. And that's not always the right choice, I don't think. Some things just look good dry brushed, right? Like one color is all silver and the runes and things are just picked out by the dry brush. And I did that as like a base coat initially, and I realized like, oh shit, this actually looks good. Like this might look worse if I pick out all the runes in gold, or I pick them all out in blue or something like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to just not do something time consuming. Basically.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So I ended up, trying to do the whole thing in this kind of, brushed chromatic kind of multi-hued silver that I'm working on because I want to do it for the next batch of models I'm going to do. And so the way that is done, there's a bit of it on the model I've done previously, but I've kind of got it down now. So it's a lead belcher basic metal base coat. And this is the key thing. Then that is dry brushed with iron breaker, which is a shade up, like straight away. No washes or anything, just like a highlight. And if you kind of like a fine dry brush, you can create a brushed metal effect because you're brushing metal. Like that's
all fits into place.
Yeah. And then thin down Gulliman blue glaze over the entire thing, which makes it look blue. It looks extremely blue at that point. And then you can I took Druchii Violet, Celia Green Shade, and a Drakenhalf Nightshade, which are all different. Drakenhalf Nightshade less so because it goes muddy looking on top of more blue. Right. But take those two things and sort of literally just dunk a dry brush in them. And this wouldn't work on a smaller model, but it does on something that big. Like blob it in a corner where the shadows will recess and then drag it like across the surface of things and use a dry brush to like swirl it in and wet blend it with other shades. And you have to kind of go a bit mad and approach it like a kind of impressionist painter, just like swirls and kind of like, cause as soon as you create streaks, it looks bad.
Right.
But if you can keep blending things and kind of get it into the shadows and sometimes just pull some of the moisture out with a brush, you can end up kind of nicely creating like lots of different kind of blended shades over the top of the silver.
Yeah.
At which point it still looks a little bit messy, but then you go over with like a light silver dry brush, like Stormhost Silver or something. And that binds everything together, I think, because your eye catches the silveriness first. And it's quite a subtle effect, but I really liked how it turned out because I put like the star field underneath the big clock and there's sort of purple and green ooze all around it. It kind of feels like it's got some of the light of those things kind of pulled into it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's really nice. So
yeah, it's turned out super, super well. It was like, I really noticed that effect when I was actually looking at your board. I was like, wow, it is noticeable. Like, it's worth going to that effort to get to add
it wasn't just a stupid thing I did. Like, I was talking because a guy was looking at my Lord of Change yesterday in the shop and he was like, and we were talking about it. He was like, I'm just taking ages. I was like, yeah, it took 3.5 weeks. And he's like, and I just said like, you know, and there's always a point with these models where you go, am I going to pick out every single gemstone or am I not going to pick out every single gemstone? And he just looked at me like, so you didn't bother, right? And I was like, no, look, look in the tiny gems and his wings. And he's like, why did you do that? I was like, I don't know. You can't see them.
No.
Yeah.
But you did win. You won
I did.
twice.
I won Best Painted at Armies on Parade in Bath. And so, yeah, it maybe took a little bit. I appreciate I'm banging on a lot, but like the experience of entering that was interesting. Because, I mean, you came down, Tom, yesterday.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a massive competition. So 10 people had signed up for Armies on Parade for Age of Sigmar because they split them up into Age of Sigmar and 40k. 10 people had signed up for Age of Sigmar, of which 6 showed up, which I think is about the most likely outcome because there's no entry, you don't pay to enter, so there's nothing binding you to it. So that's not unforeseeable. And so while it's actually like, initially I was like sort of obviously happy to have won, but it wasn't like, it was like, you know, it's like, oh, that's nice. But like, actually it sort of stuck with me. It's like, oh, that is nice. Like, it is nice to go and have people enjoy looking at your thing. And for people who aren't your friends to say something's nice is, because it's a public vote, is like a cool thing to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously there wasn't like loads and loads of competition because it was 3 entries were under 15s, the Youngbloods entries. And they were, obviously the standard was mixed, but like they were, you know, they obviously all kind of represented a lot of enthusiasm. And I think honestly, like courage to go along with your stuff when you're a kid and put it out on a table, like, but I didn't feel like I was necessarily competing with them in terms of painting because, I mean, literally it's nothing to do with skill. It's everything to do with being older, having better stuff and more patience, essentially. But I was, you know, there were the 2 boards next to me that were also by adults and were all really interesting. And that was the thing that made me happy is there was no cool. like, I mean, you saw them, right, Tom? Yeah,
they're an interesting sort of mix of approaches to it. So you obviously put a lot of effort into your board, Chris, but the one next to you is they built an entire sort of glade with high walls and you sort of peered into it and there was like a a gathering of wanderers who were like riding stags and stuff, and it looked like a kind of meet, kind of a gathering of like a tribe. And there was a beautiful waterfall effect, like a whirlpool that was like, as though it's frozen in time, like really, really nicely done kind of scenery, the terrain side of things, which I wasn't expecting to see as much terrain out of those entries. I thought I was expecting more just, here's a flat board with my army on it.
Yeah, which is kind of what I did, really. I had enough terrain to offset the army, but yeah, like, I mean, I had almost 80 models on the board.
Right.
And I think I had the highest model count by like almost a factor of 3, compared to any board there. And I think it was just different attitudes to armies on parade, right? Like mine was my army and here's a surface that they are on that looks half nice.
Yeah.
Whereas the others were like dioramas, like full scenery building challenges, which was super cool to see.
Yeah. And they all told stories. The third one was a nice scene based on Game of Thrones where there's an enormous wall that is kind of caved in and there were undead riders coming through it and a zombie dragon kind of on top, which anyone who's seen Game of Thrones in recent seasons will recognize immediately. And it's kind of taking that Game of Thrones approach to Nagashi's forces to death. And there wasn't a huge number of models there, but it was an impressive build. It was an impressive scale and really told a story, and you just got that story immediately as soon as you looked at it.
I think one thing I thought was really interesting is like, so, not to sort of treat this as a kind of way of typing messages into Discord vicariously, but like, I know that, Drew from our, miniatures Discord was talking about the kind of the experience of going to an event like this and having your expectations of where your own paint level is at changed because you see people submitting their best work and you know you're better or you know you're worse or whatever it is. You know, it's easy to surround yourself with people who have a similar sensibility to you and only compare yourself. But actually, I think the thing that I realized is that you could probably come up with any number of technical objections to the quality of paintwork or anything on different dioramas, including mine. But what actually matters is the effect of the whole. It's a much more holistic thing. And, two things matter more. One is that actually most people are trying and showing up with a board and showing up with something you've invested time in. Even if, like one of the under 15 entries, had built something that looked like a school art project, and the others had approached it more like using kind of GW kind of house style. And a kid had sprayed his board like bright green, so much that it really helped me because it kind of like bathed mine in like reflected green light, which is perfect for me.
Yeah.
And painted a kind of lava flow on it, using like poster paints, I think. And he had, like pipe cleaners that he twisted around themselves to try and create a lightning bolt. And it didn't look like a lightning bolt. It looked like a big pile of pipe cleaners, but that takes imagination and time and effort. And he's a kid. Like you don't be a dick about it, right? Like you don't try and discourage someone when they've made that much effort already to take part. They can only get better from where they are. And they've done much more than the vast majority of other people because they've shown up. And that is always, I think, worth celebrating and respecting and awarding. And what was nice about all the other boards is that, like, they all had a big effect on people. And I was watching people walk around the shop because people go around and there are lots of different categories and they vote for different things in different categories. And one thing that I thought was super interesting, and maybe segue into a different chat about AOS more broadly, but like, mine was like the only quote unquote AOS-y AOS board, I think. Like, so I had my kind of realm of metal space clock rising out of the ground, skull tower, huge Lord of Change surrounded by a sea of pink horrors and all this other stuff. Guy next to me had built a woodland elf glade that could have been from Tolkien. It could have been from old world Warhammer. It was much more sort of, traditional fantasy, which is, the hobby supports that as well. It's good, but it was tonally very different to mine. And the guy next to that had done a diorama based on, guy and girl next to that, who built it with his fiance, had done something out of Game of Thrones, basically. And you'd see people walk around and go like, oh, that was Game of Thrones. And they get really excited about that one. And basically not, and then a lot of people had no idea what any model on my board was.
Right.
Like at all. Like people had never seen a Lord of Change before. Like a guy just came up to me and went like, is that your great unclean one? And I was like, what? No. And he's like, oh. And he went around looking for the person with the great unclean one. And then he was like, are you sure it's not yours? Because they say it's yours. I was like, you mean Lord of Change? He's like, yeah. So you know what I mean? Like sort of, again, it's that thing of assuming everyone else sees things like you do and then realizing, oh, hang on, there's loads of different, people have loads of different interpretations of this. They have loads of different experiences of it. So it was really nice to see like, people don't really give a shit about the quality of my blending or line edge highlighting or freehand or anything really. like, when they notice it, they think, oh, that's cool. But it doesn't mean as much to people as the overall effect of the thing when they look at it and the composition of it. And so in some cases, like, you know, I was obviously delighted to win Best Painted. And hopefully that was, you know, deserved. Maybe, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I lucked out or anything, but, I was also really happy that like every single board won something. Like the kid with the pipe cleaners won First Army. He was the only person who was eligible for that award, but he got something. And that's actually kind of nice that that's the case. You know, Youngbloods went to the kid who most desperately wanted to win Youngbloods, was basically walking in laps around the shop all day talking about how much he wanted to win that. And then Best Monster, which is something that I might have been in the running for, but I didn't get, which I was pleased because it went to a kid who had a board that was quite simple in a lot of ways, but he had a really nicely painted Idol of Gork, which is like a rock monster that, more importantly, like, it's a big pile of rocks. It's not like the most complicated model in the world, but more importantly, it was really nicely framed by his board. And so it just looked good, looked right. Best scenery went to the guy with the elf waterfall, which again deserved. Yeah. And best theme went to the Game of Thrones guy. Because everyone fucking likes Game of Thrones. And that was really nice because, that was just how the public vote fell. That wasn't, you know, rigging by Games Workshop to make sure everyone gets a prize. No. That was just, you know, a nice feeling. It was like, like, everyone had a nice time here and appreciated different kinds of skill, which I think is something that very paint-minded people can forget sometimes. That there's a world beyond technique, and it's called whether people like it or not. And that actually often has nothing to do with technique.
It was a nice positive atmosphere in there. I like them running events that are hobby focused and not like Warhammer is so many different things, different people. And I like it when Games Workshop put out these events as like lightning rods for different types of engagement with AOS. So, you know, they're running tournaments and that's awesome. But I love that they're also doing these hobby things like Armies on Parade. And it gives you something to shoot for even a year out, as you were saying. Gives you a little, you know, you want to start a new little project and you've got no kind of place to fit it in. Maybe it's not going to be a big enough army to play with, in the long term, but you think, oh, maybe I'll do Armies on Parade board and come up with a theme and work on it for like 6 months. It's a good incentive for new hobby projects.
It is. And it was nice to see because a lot of people were just in the shop to pick up the Eldar Codex that came out that day.
Yeah, of course.
But they'd have a look, you know, they'd kind of like have a peek and go, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? And sometimes they think, and it's fine. But like, yeah, it was a genuinely nice thing. And it felt like, because it's partly the relief of that project being done and partly the relief of, winning something, honestly. Like, it's just nice to have a little badge now. Yeah. It says, like, a little gold badge I hung my little laminated plaque up above my painting station.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
Yeah. I suppose the only other, hobby thing I've done this month, unless you've got something you wanted to spring off of.
No, I don't think I have much else. I've just been slowly assembling Sylvaneth. That's all I've been doing, really.
I've read a book and a half, but it's been an interesting one from an AOS point of view because I read City of Secrets and I've read, and I'm going to get my authors mixed up, so I'm not going to try, but I'll put some links in the show notes. And I've read, I think, the first, I don't know, a chunk of Spear of Shadows. And these are both interesting books because, I think this springs out of people's understanding of the AOS setting changing, but they're both, they're both obviously books that have been written after the feedback, I think, to the initial wave of AOS fiction. They're both attempts to ground it a little bit more without losing what makes it a high fantasy setting rather than a low fantasy setting. But whereas a lot of the early AOS books are like, the Stormcast are here and they're here to fight this greater demon and they'll do this for a while. With some exceptions, these are both books that are like mysteries and they have a lot of human characters, a lot of free guild, a lot of sort of Dwarden and elves and that kind of thing. Of the two, I really like Spear of Shadows quite a lot more. And it's actually for kind of interesting reasons. So there's some, one of the reasons I want to bring it up is there's some actually kind of cool story stuff here, like fiction stuff that kind of hints at where the game might be going. So, both of them sort of revolve around a city that has been founded after the Realmgate Wars. So after the stuff that we've been kind of playing through and all that stuff, like 300 years later, there are now cities in the realms. And there's a city in the realm of beasts called Excelsis. And one thing I like about it is the realm of beastsness of it is not that, is actually quite subtle. It's like they use a lot of bone in construction and it's because there are dead leviathans everywhere. And there's a sort of ferocity to the people that are from there, or kind of vivaciousness almost. But actually the city is, in a bay next to a giant shard of the old world. that kind of accidentally like leaks prophecies.
Wow.
So a lot of the currency of the city are these little crystal vials with kind of like liquid prophecy in them. And so you either exchange them or you pop the cork and sniff them. And sometimes that's really bad, but you'll find something out about the future. And so it's a kind of, it doesn't go huge places in a lot of the books. It's the sort of spur to action in one of them. But it's a nice kind of example of like what they're doing with AOS to have like a fantasy setting that has cities and people in it, but nothing works exactly like you'd expect it to work. It's not a clear kind of cut thing. They're also really happy to mingle, really, I think quite substantially move on from old Tolkien derived ideas about what are dwarves like, what are elves like, and so on. Like, they still have those qualities, like dwarves, like living underground and smiths and things, but they intermingle with humans and elves intermingle with humans, and it's one society really. And you might be, one of the main characters in Spear of Shadows is a human gunmaster with the Ironworld arsenal, which is kind of like the dwarf siege engine kind of people, but he's grown up doing that. But he's from Azir originally and came through a realm to live in Excelsis. And they've introduced ideas like there is some prejudice between people who moved back into the mortal realms, but whose like lineage comes from Azir, as in Sigmar's realm, and people who are, I think they're called reclaimed, who are people who live in the same societies and hold the same jobs, but their ancestry goes back to the tribes that survived the Age of Chaos. And there's basically like a stigma associated with being from the realms rather than from Azir, because the people who are from Azir are pure.
Interesting.
Which is, it's AOS starting to get some of the little bits of, kind of gritty kind of stuff you can kind of build stories out of that 40k has. So there's some really, and there's quite a lot of cool little kind of world building touches like that I liked in both books. But I think if you're going to read one of the two of them, read Spear of Shadows, because it's about basically every realm has a Khorne, like metalsmith, who at one point made a weapon. So 8 weapons total, the number of Khorne. And then the first one is the Spear of Shadows, which was made in Olgo, I think, the Realm of Shadow, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
And, someone's trying to find them all to do something bad, and it ties into a few bigger themes. So one of the themes it suggests someone has a vision near the start of Nurgle dying.
Wow.
And Tzeentch rising to fill Nurgle's place, which might not happen, but like, it feels like a hook they're kind of teasing. Like,
that's interesting.
Visions are often wrong. And Tzeentch likes to give people visions where Tzeentch is doing well. So like, but like,
is it fake news?
Basically, yeah. But no, so there's one thing they're teasing is that like the great game between the Chaos Gods is going to hit a kind of Khorne and Tzeentch versus everybody else, so that Khorne and Tzeentch can then settle it between themselves. Kind of thing, which would be an interesting kind of direction for things to go in. Yeah. There's some really nice little details in it, like, different realms having different languages, which is something that kind of, and dialects and kind of things like that. So people from, Shaman speak Shamanic, and it, that's the thing. And like, the way Khorne appears in different realms being different. And so they started to like seed some kind of grit into it. The dwarf smith god Grungni, who's the kind of god of the Caradhran overlords and a few other things, is actually in it as a character.
All right.
Because he's still around. And he's a god, but he's just doing stuff. And that kind of establishes that, I think one of the things I really like about them is it establishes that the AOS setting is a setting that's big enough that mad shit is always happening. Like, it describes the experience of being an exalted Deathbringer. Because that's just that guy's job. Like, and he's fighting infinite skeletons, basically, and then some vampires, but that's like Tuesday. And that's the setting it is, and I kind of like it. The more it gets like that, the more kind of fun it is. The very early Spear of Shadows manages to get like almost every Warhammer faction into it, I think, basically really quickly.
That's really cool.
All alongside each other. Spear of Shadows is much more effective at this. One thing that really struck me about, City of Secrets, which is about a Tzeentchian cult rising up to try and threaten the city, and stuff happens. I'm going to minor spoil stuff, but actually I didn't think it worked tremendously well, because it really could be a 40k book, and it felt a bit like someone trying to write a new kind of AOS novel and reaching for what I feel is a very familiar 40k story. So if you swap Free Guild for Imperial Guard, Stormcast for Space Marines, Tzeentch Arcanites for Gene Stealer cults, you can tell that entire story, I think, without change. And the Order of Azir, which is what the witch hunters from Old World Warhammer are now, for the Inquisition. Every beat of that story still works, down to how are we going to possibly beat this gribbly threat that's taking over our city? We're doomed. The Venerable Guard are doing their best, but we're only human. If only something could fall out of space and help right now, that'd be amazing. Down to that plot beat, it still works. And the Stormcast are described in a very similar way, where it's like, it's like the Horus Heresy novels, where it's like, I didn't really know what godhood looked like until this big man came along.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it helps to give them character. I gather there's like a Veritant in there who's very stern and stuff, but
yes, there's a very stern Veritant, and there's lots of implications that immediately after the city was founded, there were lots of purges of chaos cultists and things, which I don't like as much in AOS because it's too Space Marines. It's too Purge the Heretic, right? Like it's too Crossing of the Streams. I'd rather they do something different. But at the start of Spirit of Shadows is like a sequence where, and it's again a very AOS thing, where it's basically a trench war between Skaven and Free Guild. But they've built trenches, so they're actually, and it's because they've got all cannons and Gatling guns and things. The technology is a little bit more advanced. Trenches make sense, right? Like it's not like it's going to be an open field medieval battle. And along the trenches, a lot of the Stormcast are just standing there, like taking fire. And the idea that the Stormcast don't just return to Ozir all the time, and they don't come down from space all the time, and this being a big difference between Stormcast and Space Marines, is that Stormcast are almost like a fixture of the city. Like they're intimidating, and you don't talk to them, but they're just stood there, like a lot of the time. And then when they decide to go kill things, they kill a lot of things.
Like automata almost.
Yeah, like, but there are people in there and they're kind of real people. So like the main character has a friendship with one particular female Stormcast. But she just basically stands there and he talks at her, and then she just sort of picks him up and puts him out of the way, and then holds a huge shield up, and some Skaven explosives kind of bounce off it, and she just walks off to kill some more things.
I quite like that idea.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. And there's the Stormcast, Lord Celestin is supposed to be a great hero, and the stories about him go back hundreds of years, because they would with Stormcast. Yeah. But he's a bit of a weirdo now, and he's been reforged one too many times, and he's gone a bit wrong. He's a bit disappointing to meet him in a way, because it's like you're getting the automata version of him.
Yeah.
Because, and that
lost his marbles.
That I think is a much more interesting way of thinking about those characters in that setting. Like your veteran Stormcast are amazing at defending a place, but that's probably all they're for.
There's something quite pitiable about them, I suppose.
Yeah, there's, that Lady Stormcast says something like, "You remind me of my grandson," and pushes him out the way, and he realizes that her grandson probably died hundreds of years ago as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Who was she? Before she was, but she was like a tribal elder or something who was plucked out of the realms by Sigmar. But it does give it its own flavor. So
that's pretty cool. I'll definitely go pick that up, I think.
Yeah. I'd recommend it. It's not, I don't think anything has gotten to the kind of point of the Horus Heresy novels in terms of having that making you feel sad about spacemen. But, I like it because it's just a big adventure, but it's confident in being mad. It doesn't try and be but where do they poop in this setting?
Yeah.
The kind of grounded thing, how much venison juice is running down her forearm, George?
Is it the start of a new series then?
I believe so.
Right. I believe focus on the weapons, I suppose.
Yeah, a book per weapon. Yeah, and there's definitely a full on and here we're founding an adventuring party. But it's neat because when they found the adventuring party, it's this is a guy from the realm of life, and he's just a human guy, but he's a warrior, but this is how he dresses and that kind of thing. And this is a woman from Shaman, and this is how she dresses. And that's kind of, useful, I think. There's loads of conversion ideas and things like that coming out of it. Kind of leads into something I wanted to ask you about, which is we're both moving into a new era with our armies, and we're both moving out of armies that were very much in that old AOS kind of pure Stormcast coming down during the Realmgate Wars, and pure Tzeentch demons, pure chaos versus pure order, basically, to have more mixed forces to reflect this new age in the game. We basically are fast forwarding the clock on our armies 300 years. What are your plans? What are you going to build that out into?
I think it depends on how the Sylvaneth turn out. I like the idea of I'm going to move the Stormcast to a more Vanguard focused, because I really, really enjoy using the Vanguard Hunters. They're like, if you're looking at the most efficient stuff in the game, it's probably not them, but they are like really exciting mobile unit and very different to the way that a lot of my Stormcast operate in some ways. And they're just really, really cool models. So I'm going to paint up the Paladors and I love my General Tantris, and he will kind of be a recurring veteran who will be in some games, but I like the idea of shifting focus onto a new leader with a new story, and Tantris and the Relictor just being kind of celebrities who will kind of join in and move away as they have their own stories in the background.
Yeah.
And in that new context, the Vanguard would be running with my Sylvaneth. Realm of Death Sylvaneth was the original idea. The idea that Alarielle's kind of roots run into all the realms, and that she has a presence everywhere to some extent. And it'll be something like the grove of the blackened root or something to reflect.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of blood red because they've been feeding on, the ash and blood in the realm of death. And that's kind of, they've come out as kind of slightly wrong Sylvaneth in a way. But I like the idea of that kind of a darker force, allying with the Hunters, the Vanguard, who are a little bit more kind of, they're not as goody two shoes as the rest of the Stormcast, because they too live in the realms and they're kind of rogue. They're not expected to be the same sort of martial force of like Centurions and, hierarchies as the rest of Sigmar's forces are. They are just kind of like wild, roaming, set their own mission type of people. So I like the idea of an army that has more dark characters in it, and the things they're going to be doing aren't necessarily just going to be kill chaos. They might be after other things, and I'd also really like to work some more little people into the army after running with the Wanderers today. Even cause I like the idea of making a more narrative army where it doesn't necessarily tie precisely into the ally rules. Like, I think a little bit of flexibility there will let us create kind of we had
a good time playing with like no limits on how many heroes you can have. And that kind of thing,
exactly.
Right?
And I think whatever fits the story really. So if I could work some more humans into it, just some kind of faces, just some more characters, more people. Cause I've enjoyed creating these heroes over the course of the last year, but I kind of want more little guys, not just the heroes, if you know what I mean. And I wonder if people like the Branch Witch, she's just a very cool model. Furious and
very angry tree
lady. But she's already like a cool and different character. And I think that will give my new force quite a different tone to the current one, which is very much the Hammers of Sigmar, stompy, chaos kill, job done. Well done everyone, back to his ear.
Yeah.
How about you? I know you're planning a significant shift.
Yeah. So, so this is spurred by two things. One is like our story coming to an end, but also, or like that initial kind of arc, which we're revisiting a little bit. But also wanting to bring in other playstyles into my army, because I think we just played a really fun game actually that helped to redeem some of the feeling that like we have, as we said on previous episodes, I have my hero phase and you have your combat, you know what I mean? Like different phases where we each play our own game. And that's been less the case as your army's more diversified, but I also want to diversify as well. So as you're adding more like wizards and flimsy things to your army, I want to build a more traditional fighting force in terms of mortal warriors. So I'm going to obviously paint up my Zangor at long last, but I'm going to do my Zangor as part of a kind of coherent army with quite a lot of Slaves to Darkness Chaos Warriors in it as well. So an army that runs the gamut from very Zinchi Beastmen, Birdmen to more traditional like Viking inspired Chaos Warriors alongside one another. They're going to be kind of bound together in that kind of chromatic silver. And the idea from a story point of view is that, hundreds of years after my Chaos Sorcerer Lord has vanished, he vanished, but he became a Lord Castellan, right? That's the story that has happened through play.
Yeah.
His artifacts and his impact on this particular region of the realm of metal, like, I imagine it like a kind of, the realm of metal has a lot of like floating islands and things, so the idea of a peninsula is kind of a strange one, but like, I see it as like a part of the realm of metal where there were previously a lot of different kingdoms and a lot of them fell to chaos in different ways. And this one particular kingdom out on the kind of extremes was the one that was governed by music, which is the one that the idea I've brought up before. And he's the the Chaos Sorcerer Lord that, played the bad notes, and the ninth movement was his ninth movement, basically, like his ninth concerto, and it's the one that ended his civilization, essentially. But that he ended up as a sort of fixed point within this terrible change. I originally had the idea that would create Zangor, but because I didn't paint my Zangor in time, I've decided that actually that was just sort of like a demon thing. He survived millennia, potentially, relatively unchanging for reasons that I'd kind of be interested in kind of figuring out. Enthralled to a Lord of Change, but also kind of like, sort of an anchor point for the realm of Chaos and the realm of Tzeentch in this particular place, located in his tower, which is the tower I've just finished painting. Well, that's kind of what it's intended to represent. And, but after, what happens and what happened in our battle today and so on, hundreds of years later, the echoes of that event still exist, and that, the ruins of that place, ruins of the ruins at this point, could be like a place where would-be aspirant champions of Tzeentch go to seek power, basically. And so I'm going to create this new army called the Shimmering Legion out of these kind of mixed, like maybe a band of beastmen is drawn there and becomes Zangor. Humans are drawn there, warriors of, sort of unaligned warriors of chaos go there and kind of end up in Tzeentch's service. I'm working on my first like real scratch built kit bash. I've bought some parts, and I'm going to do a Fate Master on disc, a female Fate Master, based on a Sister of Silence. So I went to a Bits website and got just the Sister of Silence body I wanted. Cool. I'm still working on her arms, probably elf arms to make things make sense. And a listener, Chris, from Canada, has very kindly, mailed me his Neve Black Talon head.
Oh, right.
So I'm going to do some conversion stuff. So it's not just obviously Neve Black Talon, but I know hopefully that'll be something for the next couple of months, and that she's going to be the new general, basically. Cool. But she's going to have, that sorcerer's staff in one of her hands instead of a glaive, because they're supposed to have a glaive of Fate Master, but I'm going to give her his staff, but with like a more bladed head. But like the idea is she's picked up his mortal, or his, demon mortal possessions, and maybe become a new foil for his Castellan form.
Interesting.
So I'm going to do some stuff like that. But the other side to that I want to do from a story point of view is that this legion of warriors recruits from the realm of metal where chaos is ascended, but there are still mortals. There are still people living there, and some of them probably escaped to other realms, but chaos is still, and Sigmar doesn't have a presence there officially. But I kind of like the idea that hundreds of years after the Stormcast arrived, most people will kind of have legends about this, like metal people came from the sky and saved me, you know what I mean? Like, they'll pass it to legend. And that basically I kind of like this legion to essentially be bootleg Stormcast. Like that there are kids who grow up desperately wanting to be free from the dangers of living in a realm ruled by chaos. Cause like sometimes realm ruled by chaos means you're being chased by bloodletters 100% of the time. But I think it can also mean life is just shit in subtle ways, right? Because chaos is ascendant, and people are desperate for an escape, and they hope for something better, and they have these stories about these kind of glimmering magic warriors. And so they invest a lot in that, and Tzeentch is a god of hope after all. And maybe that's what inspires them to kind of take up arms with this, also a warband of people in glimmering metal. And yeah, that guy's got like 3 arms, and that guy's face is just a single eye, and that, you know what I mean? And if you look at the metal too long, all you can see are eyes, and everyone's covered in feathers, but it's as close as you'll probably ever get if you are from there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I had this idea for a short story, but I might write it, but I'm working on something else at the moment, which was like the story of someone who's basically convinced they're in the right army until one day, maybe 40 years into their campaigning career with this legion, they actually see Stormcast for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's,
shit. No. I've made a terrible mistake.
Which is, again, hopefully quite a Tzeentchy sort of thing to have realized, like, oh, bollocks.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the theme for the next one. And I think that will also feed into things like Firestorm when we start doing that, because it'll give me an army that's more likely to take territory than just gribble at it and vanish. But yeah.
Yeah, it's been a dramatic Archive campaign. This particular, Stormcast invasion of the realm of metal has had a nice kind of pull and push, to it.
Yeah. And it's now come to an end. So we should just do a battle report, shall we?
Sure,
and this is like, we played a almost 2,500 point battle. And for reasons we'll explain, on a 4 foot by 4 foot board with a 2 foot by 2 foot board that I painted recently attached to it. So a sort of 4 foot by 4 foot with a pointy end.
Yeah.
Which sort of simulates a kind of floating island, kind of cliff face kind of thing. So, a narrow passage to a thin end of the board. So the campaign so far, to sum up, after, encountering, your general, Tantra's first encountered Tzeentch while invading the realm of fire, and that was our first ever game of AOS. That's what that intended to be.
Yeah.
Expecting to find corn, found hot magic death.
It was at the very beginning of Realmgate Wars. It's the Hammers of Sigmar were going into that realm, and the whole book series focuses on Vander's Hammerhand and his lot. Well, Tantra was getting lost in some fog over here and accidentally running into Tzeentch, and that kickstarted a centuries-long rivalry between.
Yeah, during the Realmgate Wars, right?
Yes,
and over time, that eventually led to sort of this, I guess, quest on the part of your army to find and destroy or deactivate or kind of banish the source of this particular kind of demonic power, which is kind of represented in my army by the green flame, but the idea that it was coming from this particular place in the realm of metal where we kind of decided a particular silver tower was parked, which is kind of links to our silver tower campaign, but also to my Gaunt Summoner, who was the first general I had before the Lord of Change showed up.
Yeah.
Which is the tower of this particular sorcerer lord. So in the previous games, the most important things are that you invaded the realm of metal, but actually struggled to get a foothold in it. You're kind of coming up through the ruins of this ancient arcane civilization, get beat back to the beachhead, essentially, whatever you would call a beachhead. The changeling is there helping somewhat.
Yeah.
And then you punched through in the end with the help of the Celestin Prime, whose main thing it did wasn't really help much.
No, but it did end the life of the Chaos Sorcerer. And by end, I mean, he got whacked.
Yeah, he got hit by the Warhammer.
The Warhammer, yeah. And in that moment, we decided that he was actually dead. Like, he could return if we go back to this, era, back to when he was still alive if we choose to. But at that moment, he died. And not only did he die, but Galmaraz, the Warhammer, has actually allowed him to be reforged, and he came back into the same campaign soon after as a Lord Castellant. So he swapped his orb of chaotic flame for a lantern that now blazes with Azir's glory, and he uses it to sear the demons and reclaim his old territory. Yeah,
and he swapped his master, Lord of Change, who did finally show up in that battle to kind of take this seriously, for a dog.
He got a dog now.
Yeah, he's got a dog now. And so this sort of basically brings us up to the present. We had the battle that we kind of half played for the last episode, which was another one of those kind of skirmishes, right? Yeah. This kind of tug of war is this kind of, this impression of this grueling, basically march demons all the way deeper and deeper and deeper into this, kind of, massive realm, with this tower at the end of it. And so we kind of created using the clock, which is kind of the apparatus by which this kind of demonic invasion was kind of enabled, in the tower at the end of the battlefield that kind of stretched out to your deployment zone. With the idea that you finally reached the end of that journey, right? Like you're here to end it. And what I was trying to find the right scenario for this, and I ended up, buying through the Warhammer app, a scenario from one of the Realmgate Wars books, which is actually designed to replicate the battle from the Realmgate Wars, where a bunch of Stormcast fight through a Nurgle line to deliver the seed of Alariel to the place where she can be reborn into Battle Alariel, who owns a beetle.
Yep.
But actually, and it's a really cool scenario. It's actually one of my favorite scenarios we played for
ages.
Yeah,
it's really good.
And, but it worked perfectly. And actually, I don't regret the £3 it cost, because it's like we got an afternoon's worth of fun after that, which is like the bus ticket. It's fine. And so the way we decided to set it up is, rather than, you are delivering, rather than your objective is to deliver a particular artifact to a particular place, your objective was to get your Castellant to the tower, because he is the only person who can, fix this, basically. Like, it's his tower from his previous life, right? Yeah. His soul is bound to it.
Yeah.
And only by entering it, whatever that means for him, only by entering it can, this end.
He's on a mission to cleanse it, essentially, and it's his holy mission now, after being turned, by Sigmar. And so it's his job to very slowly walk across the board and try to get to the other end while the Tzeentch demon hordes are massed against him.
Yeah, he meets his old boss in the street. And
he does,
It's awkward.
It's real awkward.
But, and there's actually a bunch of cool rules. So the most important one though, because the obvious problem of probably occurring in the brains of people who've heard our battle reports before is like, I do loads of mortal wounds. I have lots of mortal wounds. And killing one of your heroes is not a huge problem. And so, I win instantly if the Castellan dies, but you've got a bunch of rules, including when the Castellan, so the Castellan gets a 4-up invulnerable save basically against everything, regardless of where it comes from. Also, if you choose not to take that invulnerable save, any wounds he takes can instead be passed off to any unit within 3 inches of him. So everything you can surround him with is a huge ablative wound thing. And then there's some other rules we didn't use as much. Those two are the most important ones. And that actually is really cool because it suddenly basically adds a jury-rigged version of new 40K's character shooting rules to the game. But also it means that I can kind of, the amount of damage I need to do, it's still helpful for me to kill your guys, but I can't just end the game with it. You know what I mean? Like I have to, it gives you a way of, making some choices about mortal wounds in a way that you weren't previously. And that solves some of the problems we were talking about in previous episodes about how sometimes I just open up the mortal wound cannon and you can't do anything about it.
It also encourages you to set up a very cool looking formation where, the Retributors are stretched out in front of him in a massive line. There are Liberator units on either side of him. And it's like a rock solid core of infantry. Like everyone is there to protect him. And he has the whole army is his bodyguard in that sense. And it looked really, really cool when we deployed.
It really did. And it felt really themey. Like, I'm used to the Retributor bus arriving from space. Like, I just am now, right? And it was nice to have a game where they were they played differently, right? Their job it was very heroic. Their job was just to walk in front of this guy and take the hits for him and hopefully hit some things with their hammers. But they were there to be paladins, I think, rather than like space assassins. You still had the Fulminators in space and the Vanguard Hunters in Pursuit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really interesting thing. And then so we should start with the game itself because it was, and I knew that like, I had to shoot you a lot. So my plan wasn't necessarily to charge you. It was to, I deployed in a kind of wide fan. But I was pretty pleased with my deployment. Like my deployment gave myself all the options that I needed. Everyone was near where he needed to be. And we had a few interesting dice rolls. We actually had perfect scenery rolls as well. Where there was like one sinister ruin, but almost every other ruin was arcane, which is perfect. Yeah. Because of Realm of Tzeentch. Apart from the Bloodnado, which was deadly. Because why not? Don't stand in the Bloodnado.
It is deadly.
Just don't do it. But regardless of who finished deploying first, you had the choice of who went first, because that was part of the rules of the scenario.
Yeah.
And you gave me the first turn, which makes sense, right?
Yeah. There was just, given the way my army was set up and the distance between us, there was no way I was actually going to be able to really do any damage or do anything with the first turn. And in that context, it's always worth gambling for the double turn and letting your opponent, come at you. There are a few things that you risk by doing that. One is that you haven't gotten your command ability off, so your army is vulnerable to battle shock if your opponent can attack you. And the other thing is, like, it gives Tzeentch the ability to put up the old vortex, and do a lot of setup stuff that you want to do for your synergies to fire off. But there was no way for me to disrupt it really in the first turn because all of my shooting was a little bit out of range.
Yeah, and you risked me getting a 2-turn.
Yeah, for sure. And that would have been bad. So yeah, I'll let you have the first turn come charging out of the fortress.
Yeah. But I did have a relatively cagey start. It was interesting. Basically, so the changeling, also we should stress this wasn't just your army, because your army was joined by a band of wanderers and a branch witch.
Yes.
Who I think we thought kind of had emerged from this like new growth, like these new trees have emerged in the area. I think since this Sorcerer Lord was redeemed, some life is returning to this area, like tentatively, and this has allowed like way passages through the realms for these new arrivals.
Yeah, they're kind of a scouting party that almost gets drawn into this huge conflict because they can, Sylvaneth is sensitive to magic. They can feel something happening here, And also the giant gold men, you can't miss them. So, we just joined in.
So they were there. They were there too.
They were there too. That's definitely how I'd characterize it.
So I set up the changeling right at the back. I had some choice about like, try to do something clever with where the changeling goes. I just put him behind you because actually, while I haven't used his, make people go slow power a lot in the past, because he's usually an assassin, trying to force you to go slowly is perfect because I can just make you walk more slowly into the fire, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I knew I needed to melt. Because you had 10 Retributors, 2 units of 5 Liberators, Judicators within range, and lots of other heroes all in position to shield the Castellan. Which means there's no point trying to kill a Castellan. I have to kill your army and then kill him. So, like, I knew it was going to be a sort of setup-y first turn. So I did, I had, Mystic Shield on my Lord of Change. So the Gaunt Summoner went off because there was so much arcane terrain, which gives you +1 to cast. He was stood next to the Lord of Change, next to a piece of arcane terrain with his book that gives him +1 to cast, and then obviously ended up almost immediately on a Balewind Vortex. So he was at +4 to cast, I think, at that point.
Yeah, impressive.
Re-rolling ones. And so straight out the gate, I managed to kill the Retributor with magic fire from across the board, which is kind of how it goes. But I like what is about to happen because it tells the fact that, like, that's what he's going to do. Like, some of the mystery of the Gaunt Summoner has been lost in the decades, or the year in our case, but since your general and the Gaunt Summoner first encountered each other and your general just got annihilated, you've come up with some of your new ideas about how to deal with the Whirlwind Man who kills you from far away. Yeah. But basically the decisions I made were, I had some Cleric Acolytes and some Zangor, like not a lot either, like from the Silver Tower set basically. I moved them back into a defensive position behind my Lord of Change on 2 sides to basically make it impossible for the Vanguard Hunters or the Fulminators to come in ways that would threaten the Lord of Change specifically. Yeah. Because that is a concern. I don't want you getting behind me. But the only thing I did was commit on my right flank because there's the Ogre Thaumaturge who I buffed up to the 9s. Some Pink Horrors cast a mutation on him and he grew an extra horn. I sent him and those horrors, one of 3 units of horrors on my chariot, charging forward on the right flank because I wanted to give you something to fight and bleed you at a distance. I didn't want to just wait for you to walk into me. I knew I'd lose those characters, but I wanted them to do some damage. And also I realized that in a single turn I could get in range to shoot at the Heralder with the chariot. So that was a bit of a grudge match. That was like, no honking in this game, buddy. But the chariot was very cold. For a chariot that's on fire, it just went sort of like, at him and nothing much happened. And that was basically my first turn, I think. So
so my Castellan opens his lantern and he can shine it on his pals to make them happy. So he gives the Retributors have the +1 save. So they're like 30 wounds, 3+ save, quite tough. Not very good, very hard to take them down with shooting and with combat. So I rolled for movement and the Fulminators came down immediately. Yeah. They were keen to get involved. You've done a really good job of screening off the backfield. It's interesting how our armies have learned how to counter each other's, tendencies. So I decided to just counter-charge down that flank that you were advancing. So I put them 9 inches away from that flaming chariot and the Ogre Thaumaturge. And then charge my general forward, inspired by the tooting of my horn man, which lets him run and charge. And, the Branch Witch put a Mystic Shield on him. First time perhaps ever used magic. And, so that was just satisfying, the sheer novelty of that. So, and I pushed my Ferriton and, my 2-2 man forwards. Big kind of powerful counterpunch on that side of the flank. And also on the same flank, cause you'd moved your Pink Horrors forwards, the Vanguard Hunters came on in the very back corner of the board.
Yeah, they had a very narrow spot they could fit in.
Yeah, they could just about come on, and they, basically just came on the board to try and kill your Gaunt Summoner. Yeah,
they kind of emerged, there'll be a picture of this in the show notes, like, kind of right underneath him. Yeah. But I kind of like the idea that, like, in hindsight, it was a mistake by me to leave that open. I didn't think you'd be able to do much when you were there, but they do have a shooting attack. So
that's the thing. Yeah.
So but I like the idea that was your counterplay to the Gaunt Summoner, was to have the Vanguard Hunters who've been sent with one mission, which is to assassinate the Whirlwind Man.
Right.
The other thing that was important that happened involving crossbows was lightning chariot on the long strike crossbows.
Yeah, so I've got, they're my snipers who I've referred to before in the podcast. But, the, Lord Relictor, I, cast a lightning chariot that ferried them into a forest slightly further ahead that also put them in range of the Lord of Change, that was their entire mission, was to stand in that forest sniping the Lord of Change for as long as possible.
And you got a hot...
Oh yeah, they've got a rule called headshot, where if you get a 6 to hit, they've only got 1 attack each, but they hit on 2+, and if you happen to roll a 6, that's 2 mortal wounds, just outright.
And you rolled two sixes?
Two sixes. And so that was just 4 mortal wounds onto the
He's got a big head.
He's a big fella. Fella.
So he starts immediately taking fire from the scary bush.
Yeah, this very scary bush. And then the Relictor very slowly, panting, runs after them.
Yeah.
I also moved up the Wanderers, so they're so much faster than the Stormcast that they just vaulted through my entire army as it was very slowly stomping forwards.
I like the idea of, a kind of like slow moving wall of golden Sigmarite plate with these kind of lithe elf archers kind of like streaming through the gaps.
Through them, that's right. Yeah. Sort of like somersaulting past them, and, which is very brave because they suck. But they formed a screen of sorts. They've only got one good thing, and they've got Arcane Bodkins, which is a once per battle ability that, means that their shooting gets Ren 3, doesn't even do more damage, I don't think. And also they're on like 4+4+6.
When you described that, I was genuinely afraid that my Lord of Change was going to die to tiny elves.
I was hoping. I fully expected them to get crushed, but I tried.
Yeah.
I tried.
So I did take quite heavy casualties though, almost straight away. So your general charged and completely annihilated the chariot.
Yeah.
Which is kind of that was a good intro to the battle for Tantris. Like, the chariot comes charging and he just runs into it, basically.
Yeah.
It's like smacks
it head on. Yeah, just destroys it immediately.
Also, but in return, because you managed like a 10-inch charge or something with the Veritant's dog.
Yeah.
Which ended up 3 inches from the Ogre Thaumaturge. And the Thaumaturge just fucking ripped that dog in half.
Yeah, it was horrendous.
It was grim. It was just like I lost a chariot and I wouldn't make that trade any day, but Tantris and the Ogre Thaumaturge just look at each other across this, the smoking ruins of the chariot and just I'll kill this dog then.
Yeah. I'm not sure if the dog really stopped you from doing anything. It was at least an attempt to bind you in combat in some way.
Yeah. There was also an extremely weak Doot. I don't know if you remember. You tried to Doot a piece of terrain, but you only rolled a 1 for how far it goes. It just wobbled a bit.
It just wobbled and everyone was fine.
But yeah, so the Heralder, Dr. Doots, began this battle maybe feeling a little bit insecure about the strength and volume of his Doots.
Yeah.
It's remember that, basically. Remember that. He's used to being the star of the show a lot of the time.
He just needs to warm up.
And maybe he was feeling a little bit bad that he wasn't the most important hero on the board because the Castellan is there.
That's
and
true.
He's this new guy and everyone's into him with his lantern.
That's true, showing him up.
And
he
his
inspired
first,
the general though. That was
he
good.
did, but his first thing is like, "Mrrr," and a column wobbles a bit.
Yeah.
Lame. So you won the roll off for the second turn. So you got a double turn, that's ideal scenario,
great.
I think, for you.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Off that start.
Yeah, that's really good because it gives my Fulminators the ability to get into your, Ogroid Thaumaturge straight away.
They didn't need to though. Because the Thaumaturge was just breathed on to death by all 3.
Yeah, the Dracoths.
All 3
collectively
Dracoths.
barfed on him and, it was a horrendous death.
Exactly.
It's got melted. Those 3 were amazing all battle. In fact, they've been amazing all campaign. They're just, really exciting, dangerous models.
Also, your long strikes managed to do another 4 wounds to the Lord of Change.
Yeah, they rolled good in this, 8 wounds to the Lord of Change, that's worth the points cost as far as I'm concerned for just unreturned damage, just to get you down a couple of rungs.
It meant that he was 2 rungs down his damage track where he starts to get weaker before I had even had a turn where you were in range of anything.
Yeah, and it gets slower and slower as he takes damage as well.
Yeah.
The hunters, tried their best. And they ran up to the edge of the vortex, and the thing about the vortex is that you can't go within 3 inches of it, and also they're shooting upwards, but they have a 9-inch range, it's a tiny range. They could just about shoot up into shoot their crossbows, boats. Crossboats.
Yeah.
Shoot their crossbow pistols up at the Gaunt Summoner. I can't remember how much damage I did, but I think they did a good round.
So actually we didn't mention in the first turn of shooting at him with No, actually, this was the first turn of shooting.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything. Like, you had a really bad roll. Because actually, this was right before the long strikes kicked off. Because you had a really shit roll with the things and you just whiffed everything. But then the long strikes did their 360 no scopes on the Lord of Change.
Headshots. They got 4 headshots. That's a lot of arrows going into that bird's face.
It is. The other thing that, I think was a nice kind of momentum builder was you made an 11-inch charge from the fulminators into my pink horrors.
Oh yeah.
Which just like crushed them because like we've pretty much determined now that fulminators charging pink horrors basically kills a unit of pink horrors.
Pretty much deletes them most of the time.
Yeah. You killed 9 of them, which is normally so you killed 6 and then 2 ran away, which is unusual for the pink horrors, but it's sometimes battle shock is bad for pink horrors. So
yeah, they did a good job. That basically cleared that flank pretty much.
Yeah, I lost the chariot, a whole unit pink. I took notes because obviously I wouldn't be able to remember the game. I at this point lost all but one of a unit of pink horrors, the Ogre Thaumaturge, my chariot, my Lord of Change lost more than half its health, and the Gaunt Summoner was in lethal danger that he couldn't get away from. And I wrote down, I have killed 1 Retributor and a dog.
That double turn was brutal. That is a very hard thing to contend with. There's not much you can do about it, unfortunately.
No, but but it's a possibility when you give me the first turn, basically, and it's why it's the right choice to do that.
Yeah.
So I had so then it was my second turn. I had to play catch up because I was suddenly like, oh, I'm in trouble now. Like, I knew that I can't waste time trying to fight Tantras and the Fulminators because they'll take a long time to kill. I can't waste time trying to save the Gaunt Summoner even, really. I need to start hurting your big block of dudes so that I have a chance. Because if I kill the Castellan, even if it's on miracle dice, the game is over.
Yeah.
So I started to reform a new approach to the battle pretty much around the Lord of Change and on the opposite flank to the one that you'd been charging down. So we found the battle sort of wheeling around the center of the board.
Yeah.
And I knew I was just going to try and punch you to death at this point because it's like, this is my best option.
Sure.
But the Changeling revealed itself, tried to cast a spell and failed because he rolled a 3, basically. My horrors failed to cast. This was the time where I had just the kind of like, it's time for some, my horrors, I think it was like I was rerolling 1s into 1s and my ability to reroll 1s, and it was just like, oh,
there was a lot of that.
Yeah. But the Lord of Change and the Flamers were able to kill all the long strikes, which was a good thing.
I imagine.
I badly needed that. And I kind of moved my remaining horrors into a big clump, moved all the Screamers forward, moved the Herald forward. And I think one thing I was really pleased with this game is I got my positioning with the Heralds, I think, pretty spot on the entire game.
Yeah,
so like, a lot of my demons benefit from being near those things, and they were spread out, but they were kind of still like together so that units could swap between which Herald they wanted to have supporting them. It's one of the most coherent fighting force I think I've built on purpose.
Yeah, it looks amazing as well. Like when you see each army synergized up and, moving together, especially those Screamers, they've got such a good sense of motion to them as they kind of streak towards their targets.
And this was the thing, right? Like, this was like literally the fury of a god is descending on this Chaos Sorcerer Lord who's in the middle of that pack. And there was also, at this point also, because you'd done all your space deployment and off the board deployment, the Kyric Acolytes and the Zangor could start moving forward.
Yeah.
But at that point, my decision was, they're not good units, unsupported, and particularly because I'm running half strength units for both of them. So, the idea with them was, I knew the Gaunt Summoner was going to die eventually, hopefully not this turn, but the idea was that they will, create basically speed bumps between the Vanguard Hunters in my army and between maybe the Fulminators and the thing in my army. That one pink horror that was still in combat with your Fulminators just ran away.
That's a hilarious photograph of that.
Yeah, just sort of fled into the ruins. To also try and block you, because if he's just between two places, it gets annoying.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good move.
And and I had to make some choices about what I was going to shoot. And I think I've gotten a bit smarter about like, I want to kill your retributors, and I can try and do that with loads of mortal wounds. But you're shining the lantern on them. They've got this plus to save. It's not really worth me throwing the pink horror's iffy ranged attack, like the 4-up, no rend shot at them. They'll just soak it up all day. It's worth it in other circumstances, but I think in this one, I needed to be smarter about what I shot. And your Wanderers were kind of in the way. So 2 units, 20 pink horrors just let rip with all this magical fire.
It's bad news for the Wanderers.
And all of the Wanderers, well, half of them died and half of them ran away.
And half of them went, fuck this.
So those elves that had gone so gracefully gliding through the ranks of the Sigmarite forces just turned around and ran back the other way again.
Yeah, they left.
And that was it for mortals. So because you'd had a double turn, that then means I can have a double turn potentially because and so this was a big turn roll because actually I think I can undo a lot of the damage at this point with my own double turn in terms of just magic output and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also because you've done a lot of damage to my Lord of Change, I don't want him to lose any more health. So we both roll and we both get 1s. No, you rolled a 1.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and I rolled a 1. And then we re-rolled and you rolled a 5 and I rolled a 4. Remember those numbers because this will get weird later on. So you got the turn. So it went back to you. I don't know if this is the middle of the game. So if you need me to prompt you along with decisions, but this is when you kind of basically like pulled one big force together in the middle and actually started to properly like charge forward.
Yeah, we should mention that the Changeling had been doing some good work slowing down the Retributors in the early turns, which was a very good move because the Retributors are pretty much like they have to be in front. They're at the core of the line. The line only moves as fast as they do, really, which is unfortunate because they're the slowest models I have. So with the Changeling thing, they were moving 2 inches, but they could still run. But in this, subsequent turn, they were able to like run more freely, and my force was able to pick up a little bit of speed. There's very much a sense in the game of the Stormcast gaining momentum and getting faster and faster, like slowly, accelerating. So yeah, they went up. The Fulminators sort of took a right turn and did a drive-by on that one remaining pink horror. As they moved past, they just spat lightning on him, and deleted him. The general also wheeled around and joined them. They fought kind of like a 3-person flanking move that was just kind of curving in on where the on the Lord of Change, pretty much. The Vanguard Hunters shot the Gaunt Summoner again, and I believe took it down to 1 health.
You killed him that turn.
Oh, did I kill him that turn?
You got him down to 1 health in the previous turn. I realized I got the timing of that slightly wrong.
Gotcha.
So I haven't mentioned my Destiny dice. I had a bit of a shit Destiny pool.
Yeah.
That's not an excuse. It was like, I rolled a 1, which is good because it's for Pink Horror Battle Shock. I rolled 4 2s.
Yeah, which you can't use.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and I had 2 6s and a 5.
Yeah,
and I used all of them in the previous turn to mitigate the amount of damage to get someone to turn, so that I try and get an extra turn out of him, which I think was worth it.
Definitely.
But you did kill him on this turn with the Vanguard Hunters, which also removes the Vortex, which was in your way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like the Vanguard Hunters have, like they've got 2 wounds. They are Stormcast. They're not like lightly armored or anything. They're still 4+ saves and 2 wounds. And so suddenly there's a big gold force charging down, it was an interesting kind of spiraling motion to the game where, as that your one flank collapsed and you kind of reconsolidated on the other flank, I also wrapped around and started to kind of, encircle you with my most powerful units.
Yeah.
And I had a kind of hero bus, like there were about 3 or 4 heroes just in the same kind of cluster nearby, also advancing. The Branch Witch was constantly putting Mystic Shield on the general to keep him alive. And yeah, there's a sense that the net was kind of closing in and Tzeentch was preparing a big counterpunch.
Yeah, you also, a honk from the Heralder.
Oh, right, was that this turn?
Blew up, there wasn't the one, maybe not the one you're thinking about. This was the one that blew up a ruin that I couldn't not cluster around on to form that punch and wiped out all the flamers, which which was kind of like a big, that is useful. That's a chunk of damage that goes away. Also did some damage to the Lord of Change.
Chipping it down with shooting and stuff.
Yeah, although it was still in the fight at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was like, we didn't really get into combat that turn, I don't think. Because I had an idea about what I wanted to do and I started it on this turn. So I had some summoning points left over just to kind of balance things out, which we'd agreed on at the start of the game. So the changeling gives up on casting damage spells and summon pink horrors behind you. Not that they're going to do loads, but I know what I realized at this point is that I needed to just burn through your infantry, really. And then, because I realized at this point, it felt like a really like one-sided start because I was getting just crushed all the time. It felt like the old days of just like, I cast some spells and then just get slapped to death.
Yeah.
But this was, I think, a lot more, like, there was still an avenue here for me to kind of like pull this back, but I had to like really like open up the floodgates of damage. And that meant, and I knew how much I could potentially do and how many demons I could potentially bring back with various tricks and that kind of thing. Like the Gaunt Summoner's final act was to cast a spell that gives me a new destiny dice, and I rolled a 1, which is perfect because it's like more horrors, like stuff's going to keep happening. But what I wanted to do was charge so that there was big chunks of horrors, like, or move, sorry, so that there were big chunks of horrors like 3.5 inches from like all of your dudes, and then stand there. And you either come into me or you don't. But I'm not going to try and hurt you in close combat because I'm not going to do any damage, and you're just going to get a free round of punches back.
And you're going to lose your damage output as they die as well.
I'm just going to stand there and shoot and cast spells. Like, it's weird, you know, the idea that this tide of horrors come in and stop and then just start flinging magic out and sort of goading the Stormcast to come to them. But I also knew that it was unlikely that I had too much time left with the Lord of Change. So, I started to get into a position where he was safe from a lot of the immediate threats, but potentially would be ready to charge on the last turn he was likely to be alive.
Yeah.
And I did actually manage to do like a lot of mortal wounds that turn with like the Lord Change's magic.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
Opening gateways to hell and putting retributors in them and just like, you know, I've got a lot of mortal wound spells in that army, as we've known before. And this felt like a less negative instance of them because I think while it's sad for you to be losing retributors,
it's very expected.
you're counting the value against the amount of damage the Castellan isn't taking, which makes it feel different,
It does
right?
feel different, yeah.
Yeah, it was like they were doing their job, right? Their job wasn't to hit things with the big hammers. Their job was to take this stuff.
For sure.
And that felt, kind of cool, actually, trying to build that trap. It was like a nice moment. And it did make it feel less one-sided as well. Cause it was like, you know, Tantris can do his heroics down one flank, but if this guy dies, I don't care.
That's right.
And then that turn, so this is going into round 4, I won the roll off. So I got a double turn. So it kind of came back a little bit. And, this allowed me to do things like cast Full Reality on my Screamers who charged some Liberators in the woods and took some casualties, and suddenly all the Screamers are back and you're tar-pitted by these creatures that are kind of like streaming into the woods and trying to pull apart your Liberators. Yeah. Which was hard going, and it was actually, those Liberators really did hang on for dear life.
It was a brutal, grueling combat like in my mind's eye, that's a pretty amazing dark sequence where these Screamers are coming out of the trees, and you know, the Liberators who have their cover bonus, so they've got 3+ and they reroll 1s because their shields are just sort of fending them off, slapping them away, and you know, just trying to stay in the fight.
Yeah, and then also like the Lord of Change and the horrors directly in front of the Lord of Change just poured all of my firepower into the surviving retributors. Yeah, and managed to kill all of them. So like wiped out the paladins before they could do much other than like walk forwards and bash a Screamer once. Yeah. Like, and at this point, like, your army was starting to look a lot thinner. Like, you'd taken, like, I'd really done a lot of...
That's the thing with those elite armies, you know, every single model you lose is worth a lot more than, you know, it might not feel like you're doing much initially, but the sheer weight of numbers can eventually win out.
And the Screamers were starting to really chew through those Liberators as well. Like,
yeah, they're very good. They're a good unit when they're flying quite...
Yeah, like, I used to have 3 of them, and now I have 6, and I'm about to have 9. Yeah. And they're actually, in big groups, they're pretty good actually, because there's a lot of wounds. You can bring them back with Fold Reality. They're very fast, and they just, like, they're really useful. There's never going to be a place where they're not useful somewhere. Maybe not the most efficient unit in the game, but like, they are.
I think they fulfill a role that nothing else in your army does, in that they're resilient and they can actually stick around for a bit, which is a utility you kind of lack across the army.
Yeah, they're good against monsters, which is something we've never encountered as well. Yeah, they're kind of monster killers, but the other thing that I forgot to mention, so for 2 turns now, we didn't mention this, in the backfield, your backfield, the Changeling has been fighting a dog.
Oh yeah. That was another long fight.
Yeah, so the Castellan's Griffhound charged the Changeling. And the Changeling and the Gryph-hound's weapon profiles are basically comparable, but I think the Gryph-hound's weapon profile is better against the Gryph-hound because it doesn't have a save, so the rend isn't worth anything, than the Changeling's default weapon is. So the Changeling turned into a Gryph-hound to fight a Gryph-hound. So at the back of this battle, Tzeentch's arch trickster was just pretending to be a dog fighting another dog. And it took, I think, 3 rounds of combat in total.
Yeah.
Before finally, on this particular turn, the Changeling did finish killing a dog.
Got that
just so you know what he's up to, everybody. So we're in a position now where, however, my Lord Change did fail his charge this turn, because I knew you were about to get your turn, and I didn't think Lord Change was going to survive it. He was on 4 wounds left.
Yeah.
I did try and charge just to kind of do something. But it didn't work, which meant that the Lord of Change was sort of stood like over a horde of demons, kind of looming at this point over the Lord Castellan, his former his former, servant, I guess. And I, the player, knew that he was probably about to die, but I, the player, was also hoping that it would be Rad. And but like I can imagine this is the Lord of Change kind of like, I'm settling this myself kind of,
striding forward.
But then at the start of your turn in your hero phase, a really rad thing happened. And I want to stress this up by saying like, this is the finale of this arc. Yeah. And this is the 300 year time skip after this. So what happens next can have serious consequences for like this army for the time being.
Absolutely.
So you should.
So the Castellan with the Lord of Change bearing down on him, he's been shining his light of his ear on those Retributors for the entire battle, turns it up a notch and unleashes its full force on the Lord of Change. It's a searing blast of pure Aziric energy, and this only works against Chaos Demons. Anything else in the game, it doesn't do anywhere near as much damage, but it's automatically D3 mortal wounds, just straight up. And so I deal 3 mortal wounds, taking him down to 1 last wound.
But who should step up to the plate at this point?
Well, the Relictor, also 12 inches away, in that forest, even just as he's fending off these screamers, casts a massive lightning bolt and successfully chips off that 1 last wound, destroying the Lord of Change completely.
Well, this is complete Ghostbusters in my mind, because it's the lantern and the lightning at the same time. Mm-hmm. But it's rad because it feeds back to like a game we played ages ago now, when my Chaos Sorcerer Lord, back when he was a Chaos Sorcerer Lord, got flooded with demonic energy. You know the turn when I spent 7 Destiny dice in a single turn so that he could pour that power in, which we decided was the power of that Lord of Change, sort of working through him into Tantris and killed Tantris. And that was Tantris' second death. And it was like all this power turning out of it. And it felt like that came back, like that sort of like...
Yeah, the revenge. And also it's kind of fitting that, I love the idea that, this Chaos Lord reforged, it kind of left the Lord of Change open like that. It just kind of blasts him open, and he's just kind of frozen this light for the Relic to deliver the final blow. And especially because the Relictor has actually been kind of like MVP in a lot of ways throughout the campaign. He's
one of the secret main characters of your army.
He really is. Like, quietly, he rarely dies. He hasn't been reforged very much. He's the brains of the operation very much, while Tantris is the brawn. And it was fitting that he sort of he saw this opportunity and smites him, literally smites the Lord of Change out of existence.
Yeah. And I kind of knew at this point that it was probably over.
Yeah.
But like, there was still some game to play, and we thought we were going to go to 5 rounds. That was that was round 4. Like, the rest of, like, that was such a good moment that there wasn't like a lot more to say. So your Fulminators at this point finally made contact with the horrors on my flank.
Yes.
Doing what they do.
Yeah, that's the end of them.
The Screamers did manage to kill the rest of the Liberators.
Yeah.
So the sort of trap was closing, but the idea is now, like, do I have enough damage to kill everything else you've got? And then get through the Castellan.
Yeah.
With his 4 save against everything.
And the thing is, like, the Fulminators hadn't taken any damage. My general hadn't taken any damage. Most of my heroes had only taken a little bit of damage. There was so much power left on the board that there's, as your track was closing in on one part, the Fulminators were coming around and they were probably going to kill everything.
So, at this point, we did roll off for the next turn.
Yeah.
We both, you rolled a 1. I rolled a 1.
Yeah.
We re-rolled. You rolled a 5 and I rolled a 4. So you...
Yeah, it's flip reversed.
We did flip reverse it. So, was that the right way around? No. Yes, it was. So you ended up getting double turn now, which again, that was another one of those like,
game over
shit,
now. Yeah.
Kind of moments. So you prep for the final charge, but we don't need to dwell on too much that happened in this turn, except guess who hasn't had a huge role to play in this whole thing so far? Would it be the Heralder?
It'd be Dr. Doots himself.
So to get the scene of the picture, the hero unit that he's part of is sort of wheeled towards the thing. Most of the fighting is in this forest. Screamers are in there, Liberators are in there, the Relict is in there. There's another unit of Pink Horrors near it. There's my Herald near it. There's loads of stuff near it. The Branch Witch is nearby.
Yeah.
What happened next, Tom?
Mr. Doots, Sir Doots, unleashed the mother of all Doots on the forest.
I've written in all caps, final Doot.
It's a fitting kind of, like, he just had to have the last note in this. Like he's, that's kind of fed into his character for me now. Like he's the arrogance of him. Like it's not his story, but he has to sort of try and make it his story.
Yeah, especially because this amazing thing has just happened. Like this, like, you gotta, like, the lantern opens, the Lord of Change is like silhouetted in this kind of golden light of Vizier, the lightning bolt from the thing. The two of them take down this creature that's hounded this guy for millennia and, the entire army for hundreds of years. And then from left field, bonk, a forest explodes, doing the following damage. It wounded like all of my stuff, but it also wounded the Branch Wraith. It killed a Judicator.
Yes. Embarrassing.
And almost killed a Liberator.
Yeah. And, I think the Castellan was fine. He was within range, but I think he was fine.
The Castellan saved the wound on his mortal wound save, but he needed to rely on his holy protection. That would have been the only damage he took in the entire game as well.
Imagine the glares Doots got after that moment. Exactly. People just turning around, what the hell are you doing?
It was good. It was a good moment.
He's a champ.
Yeah.
What a twat.
So I was really getting taken to pieces at this point, killing the Heralds. So on the final turn I had kind of decided we want to play it out. I didn't want to call it, given it was the final game of our arc, right? I wanted to have an ending other than just like, the Lord of Change dying could have been the ending.
Yeah.
But you honking on the forest for no reason could have been
final solo.
Yeah. But, might as well play to 5 rounds each, right? So we played the same amount of turns. So I did summon some more Pink Horrors, which used up the rest of my reinforcement points, just to have them shoot. And I moved the rest of my horrors in, and I flew the Herald on disc around the board. The Herald on foot had died. And I just thought, you know what, at this point, I'm just going to fire everything at the Castellan, because there's a chance that enough things within 3 inches of him die that you can't offset the wounds anymore.
Yeah.
And then there's a chance, if I roll nothing but successes, that you fail all your mortal wound saves in a regular save.
Isn't there? There's mathematically,
I thought there's probably enough number wang here that a miracle can happen.
Imagine.
An actual miracle.
Imagine.
And if it had happened, that would have been crazy.
That would have been insane, wouldn't it?
Spoilers. But basically, so I fired everything at him. So this is the finale, I guess. The horror is just sort of whirling around and all of this fire. And at this point, they're being led now by a herald. The changeling is kind of quietly fucked off.
Yeah. He's like, he knows the score.
Yeah, he can see which way this one's going. He doesn't really work for this army. He's, Tzeentch's presence. And all this fire comes in and you saved all of it.
Yeah.
You were on cover where you were standing on some, like a pedestal, which meant that you had like a 2-up save. Yeah. But you saved all of it.
You didn't even need to offset any wounds to anyone else.
No, it was just like
bounced off him.
But it's this idea that he's just standing there like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And then, so I thought, well, fuck it, in for a penny, in for a pound, charged him with the Herald on disc. And those two used to kind of pal around together, I think, back in the day. Herald on disc charges in and whiffs everything. Yeah, like nothing lands. And then the Castellan, former Chaos Sorcerer Lord, halberd in hand, just cuts that Herald in half, like in a single blow.
I like to think it was kind of like one of those samurai movies where, he's on his screen there, he's on his disc and he just like sails past and then shuts in half.
And that was the conclusion of that entire arc.
Yeah, there are no leaders left, and I guess the demons dissipated just into the...
Yeah, I've used that as a kind of role play reason for why we call games at some point.
Yeah,
because I could throw Pink Horrors at you till you finished killing them all and try and get them back, but it's like... it's not going to be fun to resolve that. No. I don't think.
And it will ultimately end one way.
Indeed. But it was a genuinely really fun battle and a really cool conclusion.
It could have come out of a book, like one of the Realm Gate Wars books.
Apart from
the forest. He wanted to do something. He thought he was helping. Thought he was helping.
And it was a really cool end. And And so the sort of the kind of mind's eye sense of what happens after this, because you actually never even set foot on the board with the tower on it, but obviously you can do now, is that he, you know, consecrates that place and detaches it from the realm of chaos, and that massive space clock returns to space. and then this is where our time skip kicks in. Right? Yeah. Your army's going to advance by hundreds of years, mine's going to advance by hundreds of years, and they will encounter each other again.
Yes.
But it'll be like the Star Trek TNG of this battle.
That's right, yeah. And all these moments will be legend.
Indeed, yeah. Particularly that Heralder.
Especially the Heralder. Yeah, he was the true hero of the realm.
I mean, it wouldn't have been a proper finale to our games if it hadn't ended with a big old honk.
Good times.
Shall we do some questions from our listeners?
Lots of questions this month.
We do have quite a lot of questions. We have actually 9 questions.
Oh, perfect. We didn't even design that.
No, we didn't. We had
spooky.
We had 10 emails, but one of them was a suggestion for how we could make the episode more zinchy. And I didn't read it in time, but in ignoring it, we've ended up with 9.
Whoa.
And luckily, actually, I think Russell, who sent in our first question, also sent in that email. So everyone's getting their stuff read out.
Nice.
Russell does write, Dear Scaly Birds and Shiny Hammers, I recently bought a ticket to the Throne of Skulls tournament at Warhammer World in November. Maybe see you there? ? Probably not. I'm real busy, but have fun. Like, I'd like to do a Warhammer World event eventually. It's just not right now.
Report back on how you got on, by the way. It'd be nice to hear.
Having brought quite a fluffy list to my first tournament and being thoroughly crushed, I'm hopeful that the heavy weighting towards sportsmanship will make this next one more my style. What are your thoughts on incorporating good behaviour into tournament rules in this and other games? How much further could we go with this? When would be too much? As always, keep up the good pods. Russell.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it can be somewhat subjective what good behaviour is, or when someone's being a dick, and to what extent do you penalise people within the rules as opposed to just kind of hoping, you know, imposing an atmosphere of good manners, good sportsmanship.
I think, per what I said earlier about how much work it takes to maintain a good community, I honestly don't see the harm, really. And maybe that's coming at it someone who, like, wants to have a fun time more than I want to win. And I know there are people who take this really seriously, and that's fine. But, like, I think in a way I want to see as many accolades for things that aren't simply winning games as there are accolades for winning games, to kind of dilute the importance of just winning a bit and have more painting competitions, more, you know, theme competitions, more sportsmanship competitions, silly awards for doing silly things, that, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. More fun wooden spoons.
I think you can structure it so it's constructive and you're rewarding people for being nice and enjoyable to play with without punishing people, because then that gets difficult, doesn't it? Because someone can have bad dice and decide that, you know, that slaps on with a bad sportsmanship kind of debuff or whatever.
I do like this sort of soft scoring thing for tiebreakers. I think that's a really interesting idea. Like that was the case at Blackout, and I think it's been the case at recent official Warhammer World events as well, where the first tiebreaker isn't how much stuff you've killed, it's your social score.
Oh, right.
Which is really interesting, because there's going to be a lot of people on like 5 wins, but it means that the overall winner is the guy on 5 wins who is also the nicest. Which is, again, a good way of training the community and how it's expected to.
That is cool. It gets difficult when people are rating each other, though. It's like the least reliable way of measuring a thing.
Yes, for sure. But I think people ultimately will see the purpose of it. And anyone who doesn't see the purpose of it, you've instantly identified. But yeah, so I'm all for it, honestly. Like, call me a millennial, but I think everyone should get a prize. Honestly, I think if you put the effort in to participate and you are a genuinely a positive part of it and that you're pleasant to people and you enhance their experience, then why not give them something to say thank you for that, right? Come up with an award. Best hat. I don't know.
That would incentivize more hat wearing, though.
Yeah, it would.
Be careful.
That's true. Yeah, no, I don't know. That's a slippery slope. A slippery hat slope. Don't know what I'm talking about. Owen writes, Hi Tom and Chris, I'm not an army painter, preferring to stick to painting board game and RPG minis. Earlier in the year I got a cheap airbrush because I'd seen videos on zenithal pre-shading on YouTube, I don't know what that is, and wanted to try it out. I've been recently working on my copy of Arcadia Quest Inferno, which has a large number of red-skinned demons. Painting one of the larger ones, I was trying to do a good job using Lamian medium glazing to get lovely smooth highlights. After an hour and a quarter, I had successfully highlighted 2 rolls of back fat and a pair of disgustingly far apart demon buttocks. disturbingly far apart demon buttocks. There had to be a better way. After a trip back to YouTube, I got the airbrush out again, and 25 minutes later I'd done my best highlighting job ever on the entire demon. What are your thoughts on airbrushing, especially with regards to e.g. speed painting pink or blue horrors? Keep up the good work. I'm enjoying experiencing tabletop gaming vicariously through you guys. Owen.
Good question. I find them quite intimidating, because of, like, the kit and sort of ventilation needed and that kind of stuff. I know our good friend Rich McCormick loves a good airbrush, and he uses them to do his 40k vehicles, and I think he'd swear by them.
Yeah. They create a very particular effect. I'd be nervous about introducing them to an army I'd already painted.
Right.
Because
that's what you mean.
Airbrushing looks like something's been airbrushed and it, like a new army. Sure, I think so. Like, I don't think, there are certainly like airbrush looks I don't like, but that's nothing to do with the technology.
Yeah.
It's to do with an approach to airbrushing. The stuff that looks like tattoo art, right? Like, it can look okay, but like, you see a lot of it, quite harsh shading and stuff like that. And I'm not a particular fan of that look, I think. Although that's nothing, again, I say that's nothing to do with airbrushes, that's just how people use them.
Yeah.
I thought about it, but yeah. I think anything that involves a pump I find intimidating. Cycling.
Right.
This. Airbeds. I don't know.
That's fair.
Bouncy castles.
I would say, would you ever be tempted?
Maybe. I've been spending a bit of time, I've been wandering down to Hobbycraft. We've got a big Hobbycraft shop about a mile away. And, I've been wandering down there every now and then just to kind of have a look at stuff. And they sell they've got a really good collection of like Tamiya paints and stuff actually, which is really nice to know. Like, good modeling stuff, good terrain stuff. There's lots of model railway stuff. Yeah. So it's worth checking out. But they sell at like starter airbrush kits, and I don't know how good they are or whether they're the stuff people would recommend. And I did think about it. And maybe I would consider it, but I don't know. It's quite intimidating to kind of introduce a whole new set of techniques I might not be good at. Not that I'm the best painter in the world, but I feel like I've dumped a lot of XP into that particular progression tree now that to go to a very different kind of painting. I don't know. Maybe I would just level up immediately. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what kind of experience it would be.
It is, like glazing up can take ages though. That's something I've definitely been struggling with. When I paint my skeletons, I wonder if I was planning to glaze them up to get a smooth finish on the bone, but I wonder if I can be bothered.
I don't know if you need to.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
I'm not sure they'd improve things to put that amount of effort to it. It's just bones in it.
It's bones in it. Next up, Robert writes, Dear Heretics, since your last episode, I picked up a starter box of AdMech and I'm attending a social paint section at a local Games Workshop. Thanks to the resources you spoke about in the last episode, they've been a real help. The Citadel Paint app is great and Warhammer TV is really fun. I'm now looking to get into the lore. Oh god, what is happening? Do you have any recommendations for novels or audiobooks? I remember the extended universe Halo novels range from excellent to garbage, and I'd like to avoid the stinkers. Additionally, are there any fan-made projects like Vartividya for the Souls series? Many thanks, Robert. P.S. My mum actually did win a Chaos Demon at a church raffle. I was surprised as you are.
I love that story. It's one of those brilliant one-line stories that you see go around Twitter,
Yeah.
A story in 4 words. Mum won Demon
Prince
raffle.
So I imagine, we've banged on plenty about the Horus Heresy novels, which I still think are the best.
Yeah, those are great.
Warhammer related novels. If you want something AdMech specific, there's almost certainly AdMech fiction deeper in the Heresy. Somewhere.
Yeah, we've yet to, the Heresy is huge, isn't it?
It is.
30 or 40 books.
But, so there will be AdMech specific novels, and I think that series is relatively safe from total garbage.
Yeah, I've not encountered any yet.
That was a big podcast voice.
Yeah.
I've liked every Heresy novel I've read so far. Not all of them the same, but I've liked all of them.
Yeah, same.
Yes. So what else would I think in terms of?
I feel like the AdMech are a little bit underserved in that sense.
I think they might be, yeah.
Cause they're an awesome range of models and they've got really cool backstory and stuff, but they're rarely the star of it, I think. They always seem to be like a background force in a lot of the fiction. So, maybe you've identified a gap in the market there.
I think maybe they're harder to personalize a little bit because of the whole kind of like Robo-Men getting a signal, getting a messianic signal from a man on a satellite. You know what I mean? There's not loads of room for like, he was the Skitarii who didn't play by the rules. So they switched him off and then turned him back on again. Then he played by the rules.
There's some fun stuff with glitches because a lot of their technology is kind of based on Golden Age technology, like the Castellan robots and stuff. And the half of the problems they have with them is just the settings are bad and they're really hard to fix because they don't really quite know how they work. So there's some fun stuff there. But I wonder if that translates into characters, or particularly big hero characters, which is what 40k fiction thrives on. It's very hard, apart from Belisarius Call is obviously very important now. There are few AdMech stars to really carry a book, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right.
I like them a lot.
How about, I haven't actually really listened to any audiobooks. Have you, Tom?
Yeah, I've listened to some of the Garrow ones, which link back into the Horus Heresy, I think. And they are expensive is what I would say. Very expensive. I mean, I understand why, because, there's a lot of production work that goes into it. And if it's not like a mass market thing, you want a few people, like, in order to turn a profit, I can understand why they're charging 30 quid for one and stuff. And they are quite good. They're quite schlocky in an entertaining way, and they're very fun to listen to while you're painting and easy to follow in that sense. You get a lot of, people putting on Space Marine voices, which is very entertaining, even if it's not the best voice work in the world.
They're all British.
They're all very, very British, and they all talk in a similar sort of way, but they have to make Space Marine sound sort of slightly different. So, you've got the gruff Space Marine and the pompous Space Marine, the two types of Space Marine.
For the Emperor.
Yeah. I think my favourite Space Marine voice was Mark Strong in the video game Space Marine. He's fantastic in that. He's got the
He's actually quite Space Marine-y.
Yeah.
Mark Strong. The man.
He's called Mark Strong.
Yeah, exactly. Strong Mark.
Yeah, Strong Mark.
Marcus Strongium.
I like him a lot. I think he's perfect for the role.
Yes. We like Mark Strong. What was
That's what I like boils down to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the definitive answer to that question.
Yeah, I thought about audiobooks, but when I don't like an audio thing, I really don't like it, I find. I felt that way with podcasts and stuff as well.
Then you'll find the Warhammer audio universe to be a gamble, Chris.
I understand. Yeah. I actually always find that whenever, like a Tzeentch demon talks, because I have this sort of cosmic sense of them in like, I think this happened in the teaser trailer for the Disciples of Tzeentch book back in January. And like, I'm not saying that like a Birdman isn't going to sound a little bit silly, and I know exactly what the Lords of Change are based on, right? Like they're going to be kind of like creepy Birdman.
Yeah.
But like, I also enjoyed the kind of cosmic horror element, the kind of like the wordlessness of it, that maybe it's a voice you hear in your head, you know what I mean? Like it's this sort of scratching at the edge of reality. And so when they do give that a voice, and it is like the kind of like, it is weird. And I just ruptured a voice, vocal cord there. But yeah, no, it can. I mean, it is full on like that goblin voice I did in the Crate and Crow about that one time. Just like,
Yeah. Big skill.
So yeah, sometimes better. Although actually I have really enjoyed the stuff they've done for like the Nurgle characters recently, like on those little silly shorts they did.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, that's good.
Our next question comes from Pete. It's Fienia on Discord. He writes, "Hi there, little tiny models and the people that paint them. My question this month is, when is it time to say, okay, I need to stop buying models because I have 3 armies I haven't painted yet? I get the impression you guys are pretty good with this. You both have fully painted army, and I think you don't have a cupboard full of unassembled minis stashed somewhere. I have done pretty well making headway into my projects recently, but I'd say probably only about 50% of my miniatures are painted. How do you do it? Thanks, Pete/Fienia. Well, we both do have things we haven't painted stashed somewhere. So just to make you feel better about that.
Yeah, like I've still got pretty much all of the Nurgle from my 40k set, and still some Primaris Space Marines. That's probably my biggest pile of shame thing, where will I ever paint those things? I'm not even sure.
I feel like I'm concerned about that. I've got all the Primaris, all the Nurgle from that box, which I still don't know what I'm going to do with. I just like them. I might just paint them because I like them.
Yeah,
and that's acceptable.
Nice.
I've got a big pack out of boxes of Zangor. I've got some Chaos Spawn that I haven't painted. I've got a big stack of Silver Tower Heroes I didn't get around to because I painted all the Silver Tower Heroes that we use. Yeah. I've got some other things lying around. I've got a decent amount. I've definitely painted more than 50% of what I've got. Definitely. But I've definitely got a big enough backlog that buying models is not a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it, but yeah.
But that's why little things like Shadespire are so appealing, because it doesn't feel like it also feels like there's extra utility. There's lots of gaming stuff going to come out of that as well, not just a hobby thing. So, that's more of an acceptable purchase. I've got those stuff. I've still got a Star Drake, as I've mentioned. I've got, 3 Paladors. I've got the Palador General for the Vanguard. I've got some AdMech. So yeah, plenty to get on with. And a Mage Wrath throne that I need to paint.
Big old chair.
And some more of the forest where the floor is only half finished.
Yeah, so I think it's always okay not to buy things. I should stress that. And I think I had that little inkling yesterday. I was in GW all day. And I just bought some brushes that I didn't even need because I knackered my dry brushes on this most recent project.
Yeah, they don't last long.
And I ran out of Nuln Oil, which is a miracle. It's taken long enough. So I did buy those things, and that was like, okay, it scratched the retail itch a little bit, but it was like, I do need those things, for my next projects and stuff. I was like, just eyeing the start collecting Slaves to Darkness box. Like, maybe I start my Chaos Warrior journey now. I was like, Chris, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Paint the things you've got. And I think that's you also don't need to buy things as they come out. They're not going away.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, at the moment, we are approaching the danger zone because they're very likely to do big box deals over Christmas again. And if there is, those £100 mega boxes they did.
They were amazing.
Didn't you get the Stormcast one of them?
No. I missed the window.
Right. I couldn't remember where your Prime had come from, but no, it was a standalone Prime. But like, if there's one of them for like Slaves to Darkness, then I might do that. That could happen. So we'll see, there's always going to be temptation. But I don't think you're ever going to regret not buying something unless it's time limited. And most things aren't. So you'll be fine, basically. Shadespire is good as well because they're snap fit models. You can play with them straight away.
Yeah.
Like you're actually getting some value out of it, even if you don't paint it straight away, so you can feel less guilty. But other than that, I think it's always okay to say I need to stop buying models. And, I actually really am happy that I've managed to break that out of that cycle a little bit myself.
I think it's, partly the reason I've managed to stay disciplined is because I got like a mother load for Christmas last year, and that's been my year of painting. It was a whole year in one.
Yeah,
one
I put quite a lot of money down right as Disciples of Zinch came out. And I was leaving my job at the time, and it was like I might never have money again.
Right.
And then obviously I got distracted by other things in the months since. But yeah,
I think 40k was the big purchase that wasn't necessarily expected to make, but it's because I was like. It wasn't inspired by the Caradron Overlord's release. I like the models and stuff. I think it's a nice thing, but I don't have, like we've said at the time, I had no urge whatsoever to buy any. So almost there's been less temptation this year than there has been.
That's true actually, because there hasn't been a new AOS scale. Like, there are all these rumors that there are going to be, these like elf pirate Cthulhu elves next year. That really might pull me in a different direction if that happens. Like, or if there's new Skaven. All those things could happen, and that I might end up backlog. I think one thing, I know Pete, and I think one of the things here is that if you have a longer history with the hobby than we do, and you've got armies from a while ago that are still hanging around, then that can make it harder to it makes it easier to start new projects because you've already got so many. But also, you might feel the pressure to keep those things up to date and kind of add new things to those things. It kind of becomes exponentially big. So the fact, I think it's helped us both that we kind of really have an army each.
Yeah.
We haven't got like, you're not sitting on a destruction side project and I'm not working on high elves,
Though, if they do a death release, I will have a death army.
Yeah. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe we're rolling around towards second army time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, it was going to be interesting to segue to slightly different force makeup over Christmas, but at some point in my hobby future, there will be like a switch to one of the other main alliances.
Yeah.
And who knows what it will be.
There'll probably be Order for me. Order's such a big faction.
Yeah, there's loads of stuff in it. Yeah. Probably be Death for me. Lovely Death.
But yeah, so, I guess the how do you do it is start less long ago and, we don't. Next up is James, who writes, hello, tiny caricatures. I recently discovered the podcast at just the right point where I too, a 30-something mostly employed person, am falling back into the Games Workshop hobby. My question is thus, are you peeps interested in any of the older games from the Games Workshop canon? I've recently been politely asked to remove my old models from my parents' house and soon discovered my Necromunda gang, so hyped for that new version, my Gorka Morka Digger Mob, Skaven Mordheim gang, and even an undead Blood Bowl team. I wish to go full nostalgia and actually play some of these long-forgotten games, well, not Blood Bowl. Seems most of these properties end up as slightly wonky video games, but alas, they seem to be long gone, even in PDF form. Also, I had the pleasure of listening to your podcast while scrubbing Dettol-soaked minis clean of pre-teenage paints that should have been thinner. And I think I got slightly high, so I apologise if you've answered this before. Kind regards, James. So, I mean, we can't keep banging on about more time, can we?
I mean, we can, but the other, and will. The other one that sprung to mind was Dreadfleet, which, we had a box in our old flat and I never painted any of it, which is a crime because those models are fucking awesome and had a big, beautiful mat. It was a very beautiful game and hardly ever really played it. So that was a wasted hobby opportunity, I think. But I wasn't as into it when, into the hobby when it came out. That was almost an aborted attempt to get back into Games Workshop stuff. That was a great box. But yeah, more time, 100%. I used to have a warband of pirates who were one of the sort of official add-on, warbands that they really put into White Dwarf, regularly. And, they were hilarious. Really, really terrible. They, once like in a climactic, like 4 or 5 way final campaign battle, they started off in a house that just caught fire straight away. The bad shit can happen in more time to certain places. And their house just caught fire and like most of them died. They just didn't do anything.
In an unrelated house fire.
Yeah, the pirate captain had, it was so rich, such a rich kind of, place for conversions to happen more time because
definitely.
They were, the factions are less kind of canonically tied because they are just like rogues in this horrible city. They can kind of be anything. They could be like quite non-Warhammery, types of characters, like the Sisters of Sigmar were quite different to the Empire stuff that you'd seen before. They really felt like its own thing. And the Skaven were fantastic.
I had Skaven Warband.
Yeah, they were awesome.
Yeah. Yes, I'd have short of more time. I don't know actually, because I think a lot of these games are coming back, and I kind of wouldn't be surprised if Mordheim did come back in some form or something like it. But I'm also aware that like there's a lot to do. You know, we had this idea that if we played a quick game of AOS today, we would play some Shadespire, and we played a 4.5 hour game of AOS and we didn't play some Shadespire. And I guess what I mean by that is we still haven't got around to playing Shadow War, and I have a limited capacity, and we're both obviously like kind of giving Necromunda a pass, at least for the time being, because there's not enough time.
Yeah.
So in a way, more games coming back isn't actually, I'm at capacity, right? I think I'm at hobby capacity, at least at the moment. So, you know, I'd love to see stuff around, but I also kind of want to see it in an accessible form where I can get some of the feel of it without it necessarily requiring like, oh, I need to plan my Mordheim terrain board now. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's not, I mean, not to say there's not lots of things I wouldn't be happy to see come back, but it's almost more like I'd like to see some of the feel of those games just arrive in games I already play or something like that.
Cool.
Yeah. Next, we have a question from Guy. It's quite a long question, so I'm just going to kind of skim through it a little bit. But, he talks about, and also because I think we want to talk about the subject of this as much as the specifics of it, which is he talks about how there's recently been some positive attention. He states an article on Bell of Lost Souls about, quote unquote, feminist 40k in the presence of female space marines but also the arguments that tend to appear in comments threads about that, about how women can't be space marines and the law and so on. He asks, you know, why, you know, he says, I don't understand why some people are so anti having more women in the hobby. I think that's the underlying reason, nothing to do with law, and that's an excuse. That's from Guy. And I think, you know, we were talking about this during the break, Tom. While it is really easy and correct to get frustrated with people who, you know, dig their heels in and gatekeep excessively these communities and find reasons to, often arbitrary reasons to explain why something can't happen or to hate the latest new thing, and that is often targeted at these issues. I think my feeling now is that the onus is on not dwelling on those people, but creating better spaces yourself. Basically.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, you know, you only let other people ruin your hobby to the extent that you allow them to, basically. Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating and it can be annoying and it can be obnoxious, but, you're in control of your hobby at the end of the day, and you have the power to represent those positive changes, make your hobby your own, and show other people that by turning up with cool armies and, you know, being positive about it.
And I think that's a much more positive way of affecting the kind of change. Because obviously you also want to demonstrate to Games Workshop that there's demand for more diverse characters and that kind of thing. And I think from my impression is that is something they're working towards. There's obviously a long lead time on their models, so that affects things. But that pressure is not going to be effectively exerted worrying about what people say in Battle Lost Souls comment threads, honestly, or on any other part of the internet. It will be effective when you create your own communities where people feel welcome and able to explore the hobby and find something about the hobby that appeals to them. And then those people feel encouraged to wander into a Games Workshop and go looking for something. And their presence and what they do and don't buy will then start to exert that pressure and things they say and the people they bring into it. Sorry. So yeah, I kind of want to move away a little bit. And I appreciate that I spoke a lot on this podcast about some of the negative consequences of communities and that kind of thing and how carefully it needs to be maintained. But I think part of that is not, I think this is true of video games, right? As well, where we both worked. It's so easy to dwell on the people who, create this toxic atmosphere. And it can distract from the necessary work of making a better one.
Yeah, for sure. But you did that, Chris, with your X-Wing army. You turned up with a force that you found exciting to play, and you kind of tried to bring that positive aspect, outlook to the game and change it for yourself in that way. Yes, I think you can do that within yourself and try and connect with like-minded people in that way. But I think even in the context of how you talk about hobby and what sorts of things you let bother you and what kind of people the kinds of people whose views you entertain, I guess is important, right? Like, what kind of arguments do you fancy having, basically? Right. and I just don't think that one's, I think it's worth raising, and I think it's worth, people saying to Games Workshop, we want more diverse models in every possible way. That is a useful thing to write about and talk about, and I absolutely share that. I guess what I'm saying is I don't anymore see the value in dwelling on the recalcitrant elements of the community, because they're better left behind on the journey to something better than fought with. Because all that does is almost used to wargaming terms, it tar pits you in that in that debate, right? It's never constructive as well. No one ever changes their mind who wasn't already going to. Yeah. So yeah, sorry for the slight bummer question. We'll move on to James, who writes, "Hi chaps. We've all had that discussion about how powerful you should make your army list in Warhammer. Interestingly, I found the problem far less pervasive in historical wargaming, despite the rules often being just as exploitable as GW's offerings. I think it's because historicals have a different context, i.e. trying to create authentic armies and simulate the challenges faced in a particular time period or battle, rather than simply winning. Do you think Warhammer could benefit from a similar kind of context? Could GW release faux historical battles with preset orders of battle and terrain layout to provide a different type of challenge? Cheers, James from deepest, darkest Dorset." They sort of do that with the Horus Heresy, don't they? Yes, the Horus Heresy books do have historical, quasi-historical kind of how to recreate this battle type things. And Heresy gaming generally has some of that atmosphere to it, I think. Yeah. To be honest, I think this is partially encapsulated with the narrative play as an idea, right? Like, we feel the need to kind of balance things a little bit, but if you were the chillest person in the world and didn't mind getting your ass kicked at all, then there is nothing stopping you saying, I'm going to give you twice as much stuff as me, we're going to see what happens. Yeah, for sure. Right? So it is something I think they entertain. I think it's more the players aren't that good, and I speak for ourselves here, right? Like, it's not, you don't necessarily feel good about going into a game at a huge disadvantage, I think, because you still approach it as a game. Yeah. And also that it's because there are interesting, there's an interesting competitive element to outmaneuvering one another that is actually enjoyable. And for that to happen, you need a degree of balance. But yeah, it depends on the players. I mean, in tournament context, I'd always expect people to rules lawyer as much as possible for an advantage. That's kind of the point of, those. Yeah. It's about how you setups. Do that in a way that doesn't create a negative experience, basically, which is a skill. But yeah, I think it's worth, I don't know what else they could do to encourage it, really. I think they just got to keep presenting the option. And they do every time they release the new General's Handbook. It's the first one that's listed. Play it narratively, or play it in an open way. Yeah, there are narrative events. I'm not sure how, massively successful they are. And I think, that they can often err on the side of adding loads of extra rules to the game and making it, quite difficult to tell a story. But I think there's loads of potential there for, narrative days where you come together and you form a big story and then write it up and distribute that to everyone.
Yeah, that happened this weekend actually.
Cool.
Raw 17.
Oh, yeah,
I haven't found out how that went yet, but
yeah,
that's right.
that. Yeah.
So yes, it does exist, and it's more a question of the appetite for it, I guess.
For sure.
Michael writes, "Greetings, Chris of Change and Tom on a Star Drake. Eventually.
One day.
I said that. He just said Sean on a Star Drake. What book or video game or TV series or literally anything else would you like a minis game of, either for the modeling and painting aspects or for the game?" Michael, who's Rogue Michael on Discord. P.S. If the GW store site annoys you with its random country thing, I made a browser extension to help fix it, so check out on the Chrome extension site or come and ask in Discord. That's true, actually, and it's really good.
That is a good fix. That website is so annoying.
The Games Workshop website likes to send you to an arbitrary country for no reason
Change all the money.
at all. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, Michael did do a very good plugin for that.
That's a really good question. I'm just mulling over some options. It's difficult, isn't it? Because we've spoken before about, the challenges of translating, for example, Star Wars into a miniatures context where that sort of realistic depiction of people often doesn't translate as well as like mad characters. So I'm trying to think of just characters where
So I'm going to just say it. I'd paint Dota.
Oh yeah, that's good.
And that is dumb because Dota 2 is based on Warcraft 3, which is obviously based on the Warcraft games, which is based on Warhammer. But there's a design language there that kind of follows through. I think they'd make good miniatures.
Yeah.
And I'd happily paint one. I don't know what I'd play with them, but I would paint them happily.
I would paint the heck out of a Dune miniatures game.
Oh shit, son.
Yeah, that would be, imagine that.
Yeah.
It's full of cool vehicles.
Just dry brushing a sandworm.
Yeah, that's got just very visually distinct factions from the Fremen to the Sardorka and Harkonnens.
Shit, yeah, that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah,
that's a really good suggestion.
Made me think of it when they released that Forge World Sisters of Silence vessel.
Oh, the Caranaquisitor.
It looks evil. It's amazing. I love that model.
Yes, it's very Dune, isn't it?
I would buy one just to paint it, and in that same black menacing colour. And you can imagine a whole miniatures range looking like that.
Damn, that is a really good suggestion. I think, yes.
I want to paint an ornithopter. Spray.
I don't have a better answer than that, so I'm not going to just flail for one. That's really solid. Yeah, damn, that'd be really good.
More
Okay,
Dune stuff.
Yeah, Dune's ready for revival, right?
Every time someone tries, they make it goes bad because it's so huge and it's just a massive beast to try and put onto screen or into different contests. It feels like it should be more of it should be a thing, right? A Game of Thrones thing. You can bring back Dune, surely.
I think I would like there must be cyberpunk miniature games. That's kind of Necromunda.
It's like you wouldn't want like a Blade Runner miniatures game because it's just dudes in coats, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that. I kind of want the palette of Blade Runner. That's what I was thinking. I realised that you're just painting another Gosling.
Yeah. You just have to set up a smoke machine at the start of every game and
exactly.
shine hazy neon lights through it.
Yeah, exactly. The game you just roll dice and then
for how sad your android is at any given
exactly.
point.
Yeah, you roll a 1 and you just have to give a soliloquy on that subject. That's it, really. Yeah, Dune, definitely. Our final question, the 9th question, is a very good question, and it comes from our friend and former flatmate, Tom Hatfield.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, Tom. And Tom writes, the setting is the Triumph at Ullanor, a massive planet-sized party held by the Emperor to celebrate the peak of the Great Crusade. You are the Adeptus Baccanalis, the Emperor's most trusted party planners. In order to further bond the Space Marine legions and prevent the threat of heresy, he has ordered you to organize an 18 Primarch karaoke competition. But what does each Primarch sing?
Oh my goodness. That's an excellent question.
Every month, a new, silly, heresy era, which Space Marine is the best at kissing type question.
This is a challenging one.
So I'm going to do this like we did dating Space Marines and go through the Primarchs. Okay. We might have to return to some of them.
Yeah.
But we can at least start getting some ideas out there.
We can workshop this.
We can do this. So the First Legion, the Dark Angels, and their Primarch, the Lion L. Johnson. Or Lionel Johnson.
Lionel Johnson.
there's a sort of, you could go for a pun here and go for like the Lionel Richie, like the, you know, hello.
Hello. Good.
But, so I think any song with the word falling in the title.
Yeah.
Because the fallen being a thing. So,
is there an Evanescence song about, because they did it.
Yes, Evanescence would actually be perfect for the Dark Angels.
That dark.
Yeah, I was thinking Falling by Haim, but I don't think that's that's too upbeat, I think, for Dark Angels.
Are there any songs that say secretly I'm evil?
Or not.
Or not.
I think Evanescence is a really good shout.
Yeah.
For them. Or like Lacuna Coil. I'm gonna go deep.
Nice.
That song from the end credits of Vampire the Masquerade.
No, they'd love that.
Yeah, that's, so skip the Second Legion because no one knows what happened to them. Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children.
Oh, prog rock. There's got to be some big hair metal.
You see, I think prog is a more substantially a Tzeentch thing. I think Slanesh is more like, kind of like smoky lounge kind of environment.
But you got to have some fabulous hair in there as well. That's
hair metal, maybe?
Hair metal.
Okay. Are we thinking,
interesting.
Are we thinking maybe like extreme, like porno graffiti or decadence dance?
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Decadence dance.
No,
okay. Solved.
How many to go?
So many. 18. 16 now. The Fourth Legion, the Iron Warriors, Perturabo.
Some craft work or something.
Yeah.
Autobahn. He just hums it.
And then he's not there anymore.
Perfect.
Fifth Legion, the White Scars, Jagatai Khan. So I think ZZ Top. I'm thinking
right.
biker metal.
Okay, yeah.
Or like Born to Be Wild, something like that. Like that's kind of, I think Born to Be Wild's probably.
I think that they lack the self-awareness not to sing that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
they would unironically sing Born to Be Wild.
Completely earnestly sing that and be really into it.
Sixth Legion, the Space Wolves.
Oh god.
So there's an obvious choice which is like immigrant song or something. Right? Like any Viking
would as well
related thing.
Do that. It's almost too easy, but
it is. I think, but if Lehman Russ is singing this, I don't know. I think he might go to a different place. Like, cause he's kind of a dick, right?
Yes.
Like I don't know if you'd necessarily get the bellowing Lehman Russ. Maybe like, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to that one.
I don't want to think about Lehman Russ a bit.
I've got one for Magnus.
I've got one for Magnus, but we'll get there. Maybe like Hungry Like the Wolf.
Yeah? They can't
like
not have
more croony. I don't know why I see him being more croony.
Yeah, is it less bellowing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. The Seventh Legion, the Imperial Fists, Rogel Dawn.
Something extremely boring.
Yeah. I think this would be like one of those songs that you make kind of volunteers to sing goes on for too long and is boring.
Yeah.
Like, he'd be the only person to accidentally sing a sad song at karaoke, which is always a huge mistake.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking Michael Ball.
I was thinking, like, Hurt by Johnny Cash. Possibly.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it could really bum everybody out.
Yeah.
But also like, I hurt myself today in the pain glove.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I hurt myself today.
Yeah. To see if I still feel 6
hours later.
The Imperial Fists.
Remix.
Eighth Legion, the Night Lords.
Oh my god.
Conrad Kurz.
Oh, he would be the best karaoke.
He would, yeah.
He would be amazing.
Yeah, it would be like,
he would be so charismatic and just into it.
The Cure, maybe?
Right?
I'm thinking like, it depends, like, I don't know what I'm saying, he sings like Friday I'm in Love or something. I mean, he's a vampire man. He's a big old Dracula.
Yeah.
Meatloaf. Bat Out of Hell.
Bat Out of Hell. Yeah, that's perfect. That's Night Lords.
Yeah. Incidentally, full on karaoke tip, don't sing Paradise by the Dashboard Light or any Meatloaf song in karaoke because they go on for 1,000,000 years and there's a 4-minute solo in the middle where you have to stand there like a twat.
And also you're not Meatloaf.
So
it's not going to work.
No matter how drunk you are. This one will be good. Ninth Legion, the Blood Angels, Sanguinius.
Sanguinius. I imagine being like a crooner. I don't know.
Yes, why. Angel Boy, right? Like voice of an angel.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
would it be?
you don't think of it to look at him, but he's actually got an extremely
high falsetto
counter tenor.
Yeah, exactly. What would it be? Let me think. Or it could be something like James Blunt. It goes to like a You're Beautiful.
You're Beautiful. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Or like,
Star Sailor.
Yeah. Coldplay. No, it's not. I mean, it's Blood Angels in there. There's got to be there's got to be Fury. Like, cause Sanguinius is also Fury as well as.
Yeah. I mean, Trouble by Coldplay would have been good. I never meant to cause you trouble. But, we're all sorry we're vampires.
Yeah, exactly. But there's also something kind of gothy there as well, because they are vampires, right? Like,
he's fabulous. He's got big wings and everything, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's almost like not, weirdly, I don't think of, the Blood Angels as Space Marines being anything like him. Cause they're always like, they're not very showy at all. And he's actually he's one of the showiest Primarchs.
They are pretty showy. They're very ornate. They're very Catholic in their
maybe that's
Space Marine-ness. Maybe, no, he's not sad enough for Morrissey, but Morrissey may come back.
Someone's getting a Morrissey.
Someone's getting Morrissey.
Not him though.
Not him. I think you're right on like crooner with a countertenor kind of.
Yeah, I can't think of a song that would fit.
What's, the kid who's now a grown up proper singer, who sang The Snowman?
Well, Aled Jones.
Yeah, Aled Jones.
I'm walking in. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, I'm walking in the air from The Snowman. There you go. Next up, 10th Legion, Iron Hands, Ferrus Manus.
Oh man. Some Otekra. He just sort of
beeps
spits out.
Like, sounds like a 56k modem.
That's right. It just goes on for 8 minutes.
Exactly.
It sounds like he's trying to connect to the internet in the early 2000s.
Good. 11th Legion, no one knows. 12th Legion, the World Eaters, Angron.
Oh man, some fucking Slipknot or something.
Yeah. Crawling in my skin.
Yeah, that works.
That's done. The Butcher's Nails. There they are. Crawling in my skin.
Perfect.
This is perfect. 13th Legion, Reboot Gilliman of the Ultramarines.
Imagine.
The goodest boy.
He would be so embarrassing at karaoke.
Oh god. What would it be? It has to be the most straight down the
most earnest.
Ed Sheeran?
Could be, yeah, could be Ed Sheeran. But I'm thinking almost like a Bublé or something, you know?
Yeah. Oh god, like, it would be a song your nan likes. Like maybe he's not got the edge to go for Sinatra, right? Like
No, he's too self-facing to do go Sinatra. But ballpark, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be like,
it would be a Christmas number one.
It would be a Christmas number one. It'd be Cliff Richard.
Oh yeah,
it would be a Cliff Richard song. But which Cliff Richard song?
I can't think of the name.
Maybe I know.
They all blur into one.
They do.
Deeply mediocre.
It would be a Cliff Richard song. It's what we've gotten down to.
A Cliff Richard, basically.
Yeah, a Cliff Richard.
Anyone, it doesn't matter really.
Yeah, exactly.
Swap them in interchangeably.
14th Legion, Mortarion, the Death Guard.
Oh god, yeah. This would be some sort of grotty metal. Grunge. It would be grunge.
Well, because he hates his dad, both dads. He hates his two dads. And he's got a terrible cold. I think we can go safely with grunge, but the idea is where we end up. It's not going to be, I mean, to be honest, actually, Smells Like Teen Spirit actually does work.
Cause it does like smells.
I feel contagious.
yeah, that's it. That'll do it, yeah. Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Alright. 15th Legion, Magnus the Red, the Thousand Sons, go.
And I think Sinatra did it my way.
And I'm sorry.
And through it all.
So I was going to go for Hocus Pocus by Focus, because it's just like 7 minutes of Tuvan throat singing over a guitar solo.
I could see him doing that, but can you see him with his hair?
Billowing, like,
he's
like,
he's got a fan in front of him. He's got several fans in front of him just to blow it back as he's doing it.
And then like Armin's playing him on the electric guitar. Like,
that's him. Yeah, that's it.
But I also like the Sinatra for Magnus as well.
I think he
contends both. Like, you know what I mean? You can do the kind of like, Council at Nicaea, he sings, I did it my way.
Yeah.
Then fast forward, post Burning a Prosperous Planet of the Sorcerers, it's just prog forever.
He's a man of many aspects.
Yes, he's gone on a kind of Paul McCartney arc.
Lots of
Actually, Paul McCartney is not a terrible shout for Gilliman.
I agree. Especially his newer stuff. He's the Destiny song that he did.
Yes.
So the really earnest.
Hope for the Future would be.
Hope for the Future, yeah.
That's Gilliman's song.
Let's change that one.
Song.
All right. That's changed.
Okay. 16th Legion, the Lunar Wolves, Sons of Horus. It's Horus himself, Horus Lupercal.
Oh, okay, gosh.
The War Master.
The War Master himself. He's the most charismatic man.
Let me see. So it would be the man who's the most full of himself. Is this where we get to Morrissey?
Maybe, yeah.
But what? No, it's not.
He's not miserable that way.
No, it's not extravagant enough, right? Yeah. Like, it's. I was saying like Bad by Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah. I like the just hanging a lantern on it, you know.
Yeah. Like, who's bad?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. 18th Legion, Salamanders, Vulcan.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of good Fire songs. You could have Ring of Fire with Johnny Cash. And it follows to me that they'd also sing a Johnny Cash song.
Yeah.
You could have, Fire by, oh God, as in like, I am the god of hellfire and I bring you fire.
Relight my fire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think Vulcan sort of very carefully staring at the screen, reading every lyric of Relight My Fire is where this goes.
Yeah. I like that.
Because also he's a perpetual. He keeps coming back. You keep relighting his fire.
That's perfect.
Your love is my only desire.
He has to
claps.
You have to kill him to stop him from doing karaoke. Yeah. You have to defeat him in mortal hand-to-hand combat in order to stop him, the Salamanders, from continuing.
We're getting there. 19th Legion, the Raven Guard, Corvus Corax has ghosted on this entire karaoke session.
Yeah, he's just in disguise.
And when he does, you force him out to sing. What does he sing?
What's his deal?
He can choose not to be seen, to be invisible.
Right, okay.
He's stealthy. He's raveny, so again, another gothy marine. Mm-hmm. I feel like it would be something, I don't know.
How to Disappear Completely by Radiohead.
Yeah, Radiohead's perfect. Actually.
Yeah,
like Tom York, like a sort of soft, whispery York impression from. Yeah. You don't even know he's doing it. And he's singing.
He sings. I'm not here over and over again as part of that song. While he just tries to hide on stage.
Like Gilliman is talking too loudly about what he's thinking. He doesn't even realise that Corvus Corax is singing.
Yeah, fantastic.
I was just thought that actually a little bit for Dark Angels, if we a little bit of Depeche Mode, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a bad shout.
No, it's not a bad shout either. Is there any that we missed?
We got one more Primarch, which is the Alpha Legion, 20th Legion, Alfarius, Omegon.
Okay. It's not going to be good.
No.
Their thing is frosty, isn't it, as well?
Their thing is like tactics and deception and sort of, LMFAO party rock anthem. Because I don't know, as every day he's shuffling around, like every day he's somewhere else. I don't know, maybe that's not quite right. Maybe don't know, is there like maybe there's a case to be made for Morrissey and Alfarius? I don't know. We found no home for Morrissey.
That's the trouble. I mean, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, who's the most sort of self-obsessed and sad,
Lehman Russ,
sensitive?
Lehman Russ.
You think
either Lehman Russ or the Lion?
I think Lehman Russ might be the Morrissey.
Maybe Lion. Maybe the Lion is the Morrissey one. Because yeah, yeah. The problem with Morrissey being Lehman Russ is Lehman Russ definitely isn't a vegetarian.
Right. That's
like let alone like a militant vegetarian.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Difficult. It's hard. It's a hard question.
Yeah. However, You Are the Quarry would be kind of. Yeah, I'm struggling with Alfarius and Omegon because he is like.
I don't really know much about
I am Alfarius is the whole thing, right? Like different people keep showing up claiming to be Alfarius.
Right.
He's like a tribute. Like, don't know. we can't not have almost done all 18 Primarchs.
It's a hard one.
Someone who provokes a air of intrigue about themselves, like you can't truly know them. Who?
Jim Morrison.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout, actually. Yeah, the Doors. Yeah. It's not a bad shout. Like,
try for that mystique.
Yeah, like, is he dead? Is he not dead? Where'd he go?
Look at his lovely hair.
Lovely hair. I like the Doors, though. I'm not big on Alpha Legion.
Yeah, but
I'll take
stop him from doing it in karaoke.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It's not about the perfect association. It's about what would you sing about
what
yourself,
they would do.
basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Riders on the Storm kind of fits as well. Kind of like...
Yeah, that would be...
Yeah, alright. Well, we got it. We did it. Tom, we did it. We answered that entire question. We could have copped out and just done a few funny ones that we could think of, but we did all 18 Primarchs, so good for us.
Yeah, send in your suggestions.
If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode of the podcast, you can do so by emailing us miniatures@crateandcrowbar.com, where we will receive them and answer them on a future episode. That's all of the podcast we've got time for.
Indeed.
I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to hang out with our growing and increasingly rad, growing and just continually rad community, you can do so on the Crate and Crowbar Discord. The link for that is on our website, crateandcrowbar.com. And the channel you're looking for is Role Models. Roll as in roll a dice, models as in models, but also role models. Mm-hmm. You can see what they did there. If you'd like to, then you can support this podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. Every dollar we get towards the main PC gaming podcast that we do also supports our side projects, including this podcast, so we directly benefit from that. Also, if you can and you feel like it and you would like to, leaving a review of the podcast on iTunes is very helpful because it helps people find it. And we were doing reasonably well recently, I think, in the context of games and hobbies, so it'd be really nice to push it in front of people if we can. And tell people about the pod, because that does help as well. If you have a miniature friend, then we can be your miniature friend and their miniature friend. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore, Tom.
It's been a long day of Warhammer.
Has been a long day of Warhammer. How can people find you personally on the internet, Tom?
I'm on Twitter at PCGLudo. I've also got Instagram, which is actually, you're going to have more luck seeing miniature stuff on there because it's just me taking pictures of my miniatures. And that's Ludo Paints Minis.
On Instagram.
I
too am on both of those things. I'm on Twitter at CThurston. That's CTHURSTEN. And on Instagram at Exit Warp, which is EXITWARP. And we collectively are on Twitter as at Minis Monthly, which is where you can find pictures that we decide to post there sometimes. Why not? But yeah, thank you for listening, and you will catch us again at the end of next month.